Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. And tonight on the show, we are going over none other than UFC 316. It's going down in the Beast Coast, East Coast. Stand up. We've got it going down in Newark, New Jersey, guys, at the Prudential Center. And it's honestly a really good card. We've got some interesting UFC debutantes. We've got 2 title fights at the top of the bill. We've got a lot of really interesting matchups to break down. And you know that on Bets and Banter, we never do it alone. We bring along a great guest each and every week by popular demand. Once again, Wizz MMA back in the building. How are you, my brother?
My people, first and foremost, Liam, thanks for having me on again. My guys, are we ready to make some money? Because so am I. Last week, coming off smaller card, I only had, I want to say it's 2 bets, up 1.04 units. So successful night in the office. Looking to make it another week in the green. Just continuing off of a really good year. So trying to crack, well, being optimistic, I'm trying to crack the 100 unit mark this year. But I want to keep my goal of 75 units by year's end, December 31st, true. And we're ahead of schedule. So let's keep it going.
I absolutely love to hear it, my brother. Last week, they ended up locking the Bet MMA screen a little bit early. It was supposed to be, an earlier event, and then obviously a bunch of fights got canceled. So I'm waiting, looking for the best line. Obviously, my bet was going to be on Michael Aswell, so it would not have been a winner. However, the value, I think, was clearly there. When you go back and look, he's in on short notice. He does run out of gas late. And so it kind of made Oki have the opportunity to take over in that one. But I said the premise of the bet, I think this guy's going to go out there and land, 100 plus significant strikes. He landed 120 some odd. Oki, for the first time in his career, goes out there and lands like 140. So I was like, you know what? Hats off to these guys, right? It was, for me, a revelation. Hey, Oki is a better prospect even than I gave him credit for, because Aswell is who I thought he was, man. He went out there, tested him, put the money and the where his mouth was, right? He said, I'm going to go out there and fight with this guy. I'm not afraid. He was the smaller man and walked him down in the first round, had some big moments, but ultimately the size did matter. So hats off to Oki, hats off to Aswell, but we're right back to work for this week, my man. And I already got a play locked in. I'm feeling good about where I'm at. Some current line value, right? The line's not closed yet, but some current line value. And I think there's also some really interesting fights to break down. So without further ado, my man, let's start like we always do with the first fight of the night. And I'm going to kick it over to my brother Wizz for this first fight. We got MarQuel, Mederos. I think he might even be, around your neck of the woods at times in California, if my memory serves. But I know that he's also done some time in the MMA lab. Guys 2-0 in the UFC. He's taking on Mark Choinski. I'm repping right now. I got the NCAA championship shirt on. D3 Wrestling, stand up. This guy, Mark Choinski, multiple-time All-American for University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. He was a state champion in Wisconsin as well. Guy's got an incredible personal story. Wiz, with that background, I kick it to you. How do you feel about this matchup? First one on the card. What are you thinking here?
I don't like to say this often, but shame on you, MarQuel Mederos. Shame on you. This is not once. This is now twice, where you basically are scheduled for a fight, and then, oh no, I'm not feeling too well. A week later, he turns around and he's like, all right, I'm ready. What is this? And he gets a much more favorable matchup. First, it happened with Evan Elder, my guy. He would have absolutely pieced him up, all due respect. And then last week, at what point is the UFC going to put an end to stuff like this? How can you go from being physically unfit to fight 1 week to a couple of days later? You know what, Dana? I'll take a fight on UFC 316. I want an easier fight. And by no means am I calling Mark Choinski an easier fighter or like an easy W at all. But compared to the previous matchup where MarQuel was supposed to face Balaji, I thought he was going to lose that. And then when he pulled out of the Evan Elder fight and ended up getting matched up with Austin Hubbard, almost lost there if it wasn't for him getting up. We have to put an end to it. And I'm the type that will like to call stuff like this out because it's just not right. So this time out, he's facing Mark Choinski. And, I do see areas in Choinski's game where he can really MarQuel apart, especially in the wrestling department here, if he's able to rack up some takedowns and really gain some control time. We saw Austin Hubbard get some control time and win around against Mederos and win some top time. On the feet, I'm not a fan of either guy. Obviously, I think MarQuel is the better striker here, but everyone really touts MarQuel to be some extravagant striker, and I'm just really not impressed. His footwork is the biggest issue for me. He tends to cross his feet a lot, which is not the best look. And he circles around effectively, but his head stays on the center line, which leaves him very susceptible to shots. Now, is Mark Choinski going to be able to take advantage of the striking deficiencies? I don't know. I don't think so. But I do think that Mark Choinski can land takedowns here. And if he's able to rack up control time, I think this plus 200 underdog spot may look to be hindsight value. And I was a little bit more interested on the earlier lines where Mark was closer to plus 3xx, but now where the line stands, I think it's just a flat out pass, but I'm rooting for Mark. I'm never going to be a fan of MarQuel Mederos. Sorry about that one.
Yeah, I think that this is fascinating, man. You look into Mark's story. I mean, the guy basically grew up in poverty, bouncing back and forth between places to live, dropped out of high school, because he basically was trying to take care of himself financially and everything else. So his wrestling coach showed him how to go to the post office and how to balance a checkbook and all this stuff. And, wrestling was a huge part of his life. So I think that Mark Choinski is one of these guys where, number one, making it to the UFC is a huge win for a guy like this, right? To come up from a lifestyle like that. And, Joe Pyfer and some of these other guys, they've been these kind of stories on Contender Series. This guy doesn't get the Contender Series kind of, blend to the UFC where we get to see, hey, let's get him in an Apex scenario. Let's get him, against one of these other high level prospects. To tell you the truth, the level of competition's not been great, on the Choinski side, but things that I like that are positives. Number one, I go back and, I'm going to share the Instagram stock that I did prior to getting on the air. I don't have this done for every fighter on the card, but this is something I was working on, especially when you're dealing with guys that don't have that many fights in the organization. I'm looking for every little data point that I can find. And to your point, Wiz, on the MarQuel Mederos side, he posted on Instagram last week, he was seriously ill. That's why he couldn't fight. So, he's coming back very quickly off being seriously ill. He's got to make weight again at 155 pounds. I don't know how easy that's going to be for him. So, those are some interesting factors for me. Again, MMA lab, high level coaching, high level gym, nothing I can really take away from that. BJJ purple belt in June of 2023. So guy's been working on his ground game, trying to improve there. But to tell you the truth, the 7 minutes of control time given up against Austin Hubbard is a major red flag for me. And when I look at Mark Choinski, one of the things that you try and do when you're handicapping these fights is you go on instinct and you go on talent evaluation. And I feel like Mark Choinski, not to say he's been sandbagging, but I feel like he's out there trying to get more comfortable on the feet, trying to get MMA experience, not trying to finish every fight in 30 seconds, trying to go out there, get a little bit of a feel going, move around on the feet and try and get better before he gets to a higher level. The guy's still got a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by his own admission, right? But he's had that blue belt since September of 2019, right? The guy's been doing grappling competition since back then, So for me, I feel like this guy, number one, when they did an interview with him when he was still in college looking for a national championship at 157 pounds, he competed 57, 65 as well. So, the guy's been around this weight competitively for a long time when he was managing weight. And when you look at where he was at, he said at the time, BJJ was his hobby. When he was working on the side, like, hey, you're a wrestler. What are your hobbies? I like to do jiu-jitsu. So the guy's doing jiu-jitsu. As soon as he realizes, hey, maybe college isn't for me, guy picks up, goes to Rufus Sport and says, like, my life's going to be fighting. That's what I want to do. I'm all in on this. So for me, I feel like Mark Choinski has kind of developed some of the, experience on the feet. Now, here's the truth. You said, could he maybe take advantage of some of those striking deficiencies? I don't think so. Like, I think his striking is a means to an end. I don't think it's very good, personally. But I feel like it was serviceable enough on the regional scene, right? A Rufus Sport guy, they're going to have their basics down, their fundamentals. I think of a GM3, a guy who's not credited as being an effective striker, but he has been effective. you know, when he needs to be, right? He's a very seasoned guy, very experienced. And when I went back, I watched some amateur footage on Choinski. I typed in Mark Choinski verse and just started clicking through YouTube videos, right? Before I even looked at his topology or anything, just to get a feel for who this guy was. And I see a guy in the background, you know, with this thick beard. I'm like, is that Gerald Meerschaert? And then I find out he's a Roufusport guy. I'm like, that 99% sure it's Gerald Meerschaert in his corner in the amateurs, right? So this guy has been around high-level guys for a while. He's been in the right room for a long time, and apparently he holds his own quite well in the grappling over at Roufusport. So if that's going to be the case here, you know, if Showtime Pettis, a guy who I will say has been a pretty good talent evaluator, you know, look at how he backed Christian Rodriguez. Has he won every fight? No. Has he been a prospect killer and, you know, made Anthony some money at the betting window? Yes, he has. And when you look at why, you know, he's a guy that's got real skills in a bunch of different positions. And Marquel Mederos, for me, feels like a guy who's got a very, you know, fortunate record of 2-0. I do feel like he could have lost that Landon Quinones fight. I didn't think he was going to win it beforehand. After the fact, I was like, hey, hats off to him, but certainly a very close fight. Could have went either way. And then that Austin Hubbard fight, you know, Austin Hubbard's just a guy that will snatch defeat from the jaws of victory at times. And, you know, when I watch back that fight, I feel like he made some really critical mistakes. I didn't feel like Marquel Mederos did something super special. I felt like when he needed to be urgent, he was urgent enough. You know, so hats off to him there. Like, he did what he needed to win that fight. I thought he was a deserved winner, but it was a very close fight and he gave up a lot of control. Sequencing matters in mixed martial arts. You know, you do something at the beginning of the round versus the end of the round, it could be all the difference. Ask Jafel Fila, right? Absolutely dominated 7.5 minutes against Alan Nascimento, lost the fight, right? When you look at how a fight plays out, if you lose the last 2.5 minutes of the second and you lose the third, you're going to lose the fight 9 times out of 10. It's just the way that the sport works. So I feel like Marquel Mederos, kind of a fortunate run out so far, but he is not a bad fighter. He's just a low volume fighter. I don't think we've seen more than 60 significant strikes out of this guy in his UFC career. That's Contender Series as well. Obviously, he got the knockout in that fight, but he's not showing me that he's going to be a huge volume threat. I don't think his grappling is very good. You know, for a purple belt, I think he's just okay. So, yeah, I'm not buying the Marquel Mederos hype. I think Mark Choinski has a lot to prove, but he's the big plus money underdog. So for me, over plus 2XX, I think Mark was the clear side. People got in, you know, kind of swallowed that up. So at this point, I don't know that I would follow it all the way down because there are some unknowns on that side. Really hasn't been tested against high-level athletes, I would say, personally. You know, some of these guys looked like they were, you know, a step behind him athletically. And I think that could be, you know, a wake-up call when he gets to this level. But honestly, I just think that he's a guy that's going to bite down on the mouthpiece, fight hard for your money. You know, he's a guy that the biggest thing he overcomes in life will not be a cage fight. So for me, I just feel like Mark Choinski is the kind of guy that fits the archetype of an underdog I want to back more often than not, which is a guy that can go out there and potentially have a wrestling and grappling advantage, and a guy that I think is going to fight hard for my dollar. So, you know, those are the accolades that I like, but ultimately in MMA, I feel like he does still have a lot to prove. So I'm willing to pass on this one, but I'm definitely not going to be laying the chalk on Marquel Mederos. That's how I feel about this one. Any closing thoughts there, Wiz, or happy to move on to the next one?
My only closing thought is it's never Marquel Mederos. Never.
Fair play. Our guy Blonde Dog in the chat likes Marquel here, so we will have to see. We're head up with the chat on this one, but hopefully we'll get, you know, on the same side for the next fight. And the next fight, guys, we got Quillan Salkilld taking on Yanal Ashmouz. And Yanal Ashmouz gets a home game in New Jersey. He was supposed to fight Narulo Aliyev in, I believe, January. Fight ends up getting scratched. He was injured there. He's been asking for a fight since April, though. So it's not like the guy was like, oh, I snapped my arm in half again. I can't come back. It was like, hey, you know, I got something. Let me deal with it. He was ready to go pretty quickly thereafter. I don't know exactly what happened. I'd have to look a little deeper. But ultimately, you know, this guy trains at a bunch of places in New Jersey. You know, seems like he's getting pretty quality looks. He's got a lot of foreign fellows that he's training with, you know, Russians, as well as, you know, I think some guys from his neck of the woods as well. You know, he's got some interesting geography behind him. I don't care to delve into it for the purposes of this show, but when you just look at it, Quillan Salkilld on the other side, guys at an up-and-coming gym. That's how I labeled it in my notes. You know, Luistro Combat Academy. It's not like I see like 10 names that I recognize from the UFC, but the guys that are coming up, you know, Cody Haddon, another guy who was very talented on Contender Series. So seems like they've got this new crop of guys on the way up, on the rise in Australian MMA. So hats off to them. He's a BJJ black belt since December of 2023. So Quillan Salkilld, skilled in all positions is how I would put it. You know, he's got some output on the feet, willing to throw out a lot of volume. Also a guy who's willing to mix in a lot of volume in the takedown department. For me, maybe the most impressive attribute about him was his willingness to push a pace. You know, I would say his cardio is very good. Like it's something where you could see him start to get tired, but he's just got that dog where he's willing to bite down while he's tired, keep pushing through it, keep going for takedowns. And, you know, 9 of 22, I think it was, against Gage Young on the Contender Series. I thought that was a really impressive performance by him. You know, I think Gage Young is a tough guy, a guy who's willing to go out there and swing. You know, unfortunately for him, his UFC debut was on short notice. I don't think, honestly, that was the best version of him. I think we'll see a better version of him moving forward. But ultimately, you know, that Quillan Salkilld fight, Dana White got up, thanked both those guys personally, basically told Gage Young, like, hey, man, keep winning. We'd love to get in touch with you again. And Quillan Salkilld, you know, they gave the contract that night. And he was very impressed with his performance, said, I love what you're doing, the body work, the willingness to mix it up top, the willingness to go for takedowns and keep it going on the ground as well with the pace. So there's a lot to like about Salkilld, but the thing that I would be a little bit worried about for him coming into this fight is, number one, you know, Gage Young has some skills and abilities in all positions, right? But if you were to look at like how you could get after him, you'd probably try and mix in some wrestling, right? Obviously, Evan Elder, you know, a guy who's very confident in his stand-up abilities, but you see, you know, most guys that try and get after him, they're trying to take him down. They're trying to get a hold of him on the ground because on the feet, he's throwing hammers. You know, you don't want to be on the receiving end of a lot of those Gage Young punches. So when I look at, you know, where Quillan was at in that fight, he was kind of starting to rely on the takedowns because he was getting touched a little bit as the fight was going on. You know, I felt like Gage was getting a little bit of a better feel for the distance, and Quillan was still doing well to mix in the different skills to keep him guessing. But when it was just like, hey, let's box, let's just box, I saw Gage having some moments, having some pressure, you know, getting after him a little bit. And Yanal Ashmouz, he's a guy that's been basically an underdog throughout his entire UFC career. Right? Like nobody's ever believed in this guy to do anything. He absolutely smashed Sam Patterson to bits instantly, you know, just crushed him in the first round. And that one, I don't know exactly how much you take away, right? Sam obviously moved weight classes, had a ton of success ever since then at 170 pounds. So maybe it was just simply, I'm cutting too much weight. I cannot take the shots at 155. But Yanal Ashmouz, you know, went out there and put it on him quick as a big underdog. So hats off to him there. Basically can't ask for a better UFC debut, right? Like smash the guy. And then you go, okay, go out there against Chris Duncan. At the time, everybody was like, oh, my God, this guy loses to Chris Duncan? Like, how do you do that? Whatever. Chris Duncan's gone on to have a lot of success in the UFC. Like, whether you think it looks aesthetically pleasing at all times, Blachioki choked out in the first round. Like, you can go through the list. Like, man, Chris Duncan's had a lot of success overall. Even the Charlie Campbell win. The Charlie Campbell win was incredible, right? He was getting beat. He was losing the fight. It doesn't matter if you're the better guy. Did you win the fight or not? He won the fight. So I think that Chris Duncan's a winner, and he's a guy that will go out on his shield. Like, he's a absolute fighter's fighter. You know, Ashmouz broke his arm in that fight, so he gets kind of beat up a little bit. But again, he was like an even money underdog there. People had some faith in him, not enough. And then he goes out another time, and he's like an even money underdog against Trevor Peek. And, you know, it's like he goes out there, he wins that fight. He's now back being a massive underdog again. It's just like he's got no credit or respect for his UFC run at all. And when you look at like excuses for losing a fight, if you break your arm mid-fight and then lose the fight, but don't get finished, I'm almost like taking my hat off to you. I'm like, wow, like this guy's tough as an old leather boot, right? Duncan was able to out wrestle and push him into the fence, you know. But you know, Ashmouz, I mentioned home game, right? Quillan Salkild's flying all over the world for this fight, and he said, when you signed a fight in Austin, you're knee deep in shit. I love it. Like the guy's just a very easy guy to root for, cool personality, all this stuff. But it's just a numbers game for me in MMA, and for me, very hard for me to click somebody at like minus 500, and like unless their opponent sucks and has no chance and it doesn't want to be there, and like there's just got to be a lot going on, you know. Shavkat Rakhmonov is like the only example I could think of when he fought Neil Magny, because I was like, what could Neil Magny do to him? Like I could not conceptualize a way Neil Magny could hurt him, could dissuade him. I was like, he's going to destroy this man. That was how I felt there. You know, I feel like Quillan Salkilld is the deserved favorite here. Like, I think he's going to do more activity over the course of 15 minutes. Like, the guy's pace is incredible. A lot of really positive things. But when it just comes down to it, I'm like, am I willing to say at minus 500 when, you know, your wins are Anshul Jubli and Gage Young, who, you know, are barely scrubbing together a win themselves at the UFC level. It just makes me a little bit harder to make that click. Whereas on the other side, Yanal Ashmouz has like clear UFC level win over Sam Patterson with all the X's and whatever you want to say, the asterisks. And then Trevor Peek, he's not the best UFC fighter, but again, a guy that's going out there and having honest scraps for 15 minutes with most of these guys. You know, it's like, I just don't know that I'm willing to say Quillan Salkilld is $5 better than Yanal Ashmouz, you know? That's my feeling on this fight. How do you feel about it, Wiz?
Yeah, I mean, we have a fight here where obviously the size advantage for Salkilld here is very apparent. We're talking about 6 foot versus 5'9", and then we're talking about a 7-inch reach advantage on the side of Salkilld. And when it comes to skills, I mean, obviously Salkilld is the much more skillful fighter here. Both fighters 8-1, so identical records. Now, flying all the way from Australia, I haven't checked to see how far in advance Salkilld has come to the States to prep for this fight. But for me, it's never Ashmouz for a couple of reasons. Ashmouz is very, I would like to say, one-dimensional, although he has shown to, you know, be able to defend some takedowns and defend on the ground a little bit. But it's a little bit different when you have someone as big as Salkilld attempting to take you down. I think Salkild's not going to try and mess around on the feet too much here because he himself is pretty hittable and Ashmouz can crack. I think it wouldn't surprise me if in round 1 he would try to go for a more grapple-heavy and wrestling-heavy game plan just to zap out some of the power from Ashmouz's side. And if he's able to find success there, I do see a possibility for a submission, but part of me leans that this fight goes over the 2.5 rounds. Let me see what that's lined at. That is minus 160 right now to go over 2.5. And I mean, on the money line, you really can't do much here. Salkilld is unplayable at minus 570. Do I think that he finds a finish here? Potentially. But am I banking on it? No, especially it being his first big pay-per-view card. Probably want to stay away there. But I do think Salkilld wins. I think whether it's decision or submission, I give him even equity for both. I don't think he finds the knockout like he did against Anshul Jubli here, but Yanal Ashmouz is fast. That's one thing I will give him. He's very fast and he can crack. So if he lands something flush on the button, I wouldn't be surprised if Salkilld gets hurt here or a flash knockdown. That there is potential for that early on, but as the fight goes on, I think Salkilld wears on Ashmouz more and more and takes advantage of the grappling holes. It's a lot different when the grappler is a smaller guy, but when he's a much larger guy, it's a little bit harder to get out from bottom. You can't really shrimp out as much, and it's difficult. So if Salkilld finds a takedown success, I think it's just a 30-27 here.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say, you know, to his credit, is that Salkilld kind of showed he could replicate what Chris Duncan did, which is pressing takedowns all night, just going for him, right? Get him or not, right? Just press him into the fence, try and hold on to this guy, wear him out. He's a muscular guy, low center of gravity. So those guys aren't always easy to take down, but sometimes if you just press them into the fence, wear on them, use your knees to the thigh, you know, kind of be annoying the Usman, if you will.
Yep.
I think that there's some upside there. So
stomping on the toes, doing all
yeah,
that.
all those tools. And I must say, man, I knew Quillan Salkilld, you know, was the younger guy. I knew he was a little bit bigger here. It is striking, though, you know, to see laid out the reach and the height for Salkilld here. He's a much longer guy as well. So if he's able to use his long-range tools and his wrestling, kind of decide whether he's all the way in or all the way out, you don't want to get caught in the mid-range with Yanal Ashmouz. I think that as long as he avoids that mistake, you know, it should be his fight to lose. Like I said, deserved favorite, but for me, it's just a numbers game, and I'm happy to let a minus 485 just kind of sit there and let everybody else decide, you know, what they want to do with this one. But if you say never Ashmouz, then for me, I'll pass on this fight.
Yeah. Dude's a huge lightweight, and guys and girls, there's a lot of big favorites on this card, so bear with us. It's not going to be the easiest when it comes to picking a dog with these sides, but we'll try to break it down to the best of our ability, because obviously it's still a fight, so there's a chance, but we'll be as honest as we can be.
Absolutely. I think there's always a chance, right? That's like part of my fundamental handicapping. I just don't know how big a margin you could have in a lot of these MMA fights. We've seen guys go out there, roll their ankle. We've seen guys with good chins get punched one time, go to sleep before. So it's a random sport at times. And I think that's baked into the nature of it. But some guys have bigger potential to look like big favorites than others. So that's always what I'm looking for is, proven commodities and/or, a massive edge, to the line where I just think, hey, this doesn't make sense to where I've got this fight cap.
My brother, you said
oh, please go ahead.
You said fighter rolls or ankles, and I immediately thought of when I had some Jeremiah Wells inside the distance against Blood Diamond, and he rolled his ankle against the side of the cage in the first 10 seconds, and then he just proceeds to run at him and absolutely maul the guy.
I gotta say, I think actually rolling your ankle is a bad example because it's plus EV. Brian Ortega is like jumping around before the Yair fight, visibly rolls his ankle on television, and I was like, oh, I want to puke in my hands. I have a Brian Ortega bet, and it's now dead. And he stands there on the feet and just gets shellacked for the first 5 minutes, comes out in round 2, takes him down, and starts mauling him. I was like, let's go. Rolled ankle does nothing. But in any case, my man, let's see what we got here. We've got a UFC newcomer here, Ju Sang Yu. And my first instinct, Wiz, when I saw this line, I talked about it while I did my alternate commentary. Then there was no main event. So I was like, now I'm forced to do a first look. Otherwise, I don't know what we're going to talk about here. So ultimately, I just looked at the line and I'm like, man, some UFC newcomer, why on earth would he be like minus 500 in this spot? And when you look at the tape, I'm not saying he should be minus 500, but it's definitely understood to me why he's a deserved favorite in this fight. I'm going to kick it over to my brother Wiz here. We'll go back and forth on who starts the fights, but I just think, interesting contest. I've always been a Jeka, guy in terms of like talking about, hey, this guy's got real knockout power. He's a dangerous fellow. But I've also been realistic about like, hey, this guy's grappling's maybe not on the level. And, if we're getting Weston Wilson plus 290, it might look like the bet of the century in hindsight. So was glad to be on that side. Wiz, take it away, brother. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I don't have too much thoughts on this one, if I'm being honest. I mean, Ju Sang Yu, the one thing that I did take away from watching his tape, are actually two things. I'd say he's pretty well-rounded everywhere for being a newcomer to the UFC and coming out of the Asian market. This is a guy that was brought up from the Korean Zombies fight promotion. I forget what it's called. And
I think it's called Zombie Fight Night, but don't quote me on that.
I think you're right. It is Zombie or Z Fight Night. Z probably stands for zombie, so
I think so.
Dude's very well-rounded. Has some decent striking. Can mix in the wrestling and the grappling too. But another thing I realized is that this guy's face is wide open a lot of the time when he's fighting, and he eats a lot of shots. So there could be an opening early for Jeka, and we know what Jeka is. He's overhand. But he's a pretty dang good overhand, and he has some power in that thing, and he's put out a lot of people. Is he going to be able to do it this time out? Maybe. I mean, like I said, Ju Sang Yu is a fighter that I'm not the most confident in when it comes to the fight being on the feet against a power puncher, just because he eats them. He just doesn't have any other way of defending. So for me, it's a little bit tricky to lay the juice here, but I understand. Like other than that first maybe 7 minutes or maybe even 5 minutes of fear, I think Ju Sang Yu should probably roll this guy. Looking towards unders myself here, under 2.5. A sprinkle on Jeka around 1 KO is a potential spot for me here too. I haven't completely finished tape on the Ju Sang Yu side, but yeah, man, from what I've seen, this guy is a little bit hittable. And early on, I think that's a bad feat to have against Jeka. But with all that being said, I think Jusang Yu probably finishes Jeka late second round if Jeka's not able to get him out of there in the first, because Jeka is the type of fighter that if the fight's not going his way, he'll gladly take the door. So for me, it's Jusang Yu by submission.
Well, then we're going to largely agree on this fight, my man. When it comes down to it, I started watching the tape on Jusang Yu, and I was like, man, this guy's not that assertive a grappler. You know, you watch some of his most recent fights, and he's out there striking a lot and, you know, wanting to keep the fight upright, almost using his wrestling and grappling defensively. But you go back and watch some of his older fights, and he's taking guys down and, you know, kind of ragged on them on the floor, passing the guard, playing it safe when he needs to. And, you know, I go back and I look, and he's from Stun Gun Academy. And Stun Gun is, you know, a guy who used to fight in the UFC. If you guys have watched for a long time, you know Dun Hyun Kim. And if you haven't, then that's okay. But he used to fight in the UFC a long time ago. He wasn't the best fighter you've ever seen, but he was certainly a quality UFC guy. And when you look at Jusang Yu, you know, I think he's come up the right way. You know, 8-0. Gotten more experience over time, hasn't fought the best fighters you've ever seen, but the truth is neither has Jeka Serghei, right? I think he's fought a pretty low level of competition in the UFC. The credit to him is that he's been in the UFC, he's been getting that experience. You know, what I used to love and what I thought was going to pay dividends, I saw him working with Justin Flores. I saw him working with Paddy Pimblett. This was a while back. And I was like, man, this could only pay dividends for Jeka. And I've been seeing instead now, I'll pull back up my Instagram stock, you know, Jeka Serghei training out of MMA Fight Academy, excuse me. I just hit a random button, but training out of MMA Fight Academy in San Diego. And a lot of these guys, I would say, are just sub UFC level. You know, it's not to say they're bad fighters, undefeated guys in the mix, right? Like guys that are working their way up, getting experience, but they're guys that are like Chase and Blair, contender series level guys, you know, in my opinion, right now. And I feel like Jeka, you know, he needs to make up a big gap in the grappling fast, or he's just not going to have much of a UFC career, right? Lucas Alexander was getting into some entries, was having some success, looking to grapple early, and then Jeka was able to do his thing. I'm happy to go back and look at the article here where I had Jeka Serghei defeats Lucas Alexander via KO 1 or 2. We were all over it because I just didn't think Lucas Alexander could cut it. By the way, picked Bogdan Grad against Lucas Alexander, also went out there and exposed him. So no disrespect to Lucas, but I just felt like for whatever reason, he was getting priced as like a minus 500 guy. I was like, when did he prove that? Like beating Steven Peterson in his retirement fight, people just extrapolated that he was like the next big thing. And for me, I felt like, you know, he was just another guy, like a guy that had a lot to prove. And then you look at this fight, guys. Jeka Serghei via KO1 or Weston Wilson via sub in round 1 or 2. Sorry, it was very zoomed out there. Not the easiest format to see, but hope you guys can see that on the screen. At the end of the day, like Jeka is live to knock out anybody in the first round. And like I truly believe that. You just look at the way the guy fights. He got one moment of separation from Lucas Alexander, and he was like, "Whoa, hold this," and just killed him. And you're like, when you watch him fight, he's got power in his strikes. You know, he'll do things from unorthodox angles, go look for spinning back fist, crazy stuff, you know? So I do think he's a little bit unpredictable. And the one criticism that I would give to Jusang Yu from watching his tape is I did see that in that fight, right before he absolutely nukes his opponent in his most recent fight before getting to the UFC, I forget the gentleman's name. You guys can go back and look at his topology. It's literally the most recent fight. He goes out there. I posted the video as well. He knocks him out, right? But right before he gets the knockout punch, he gets hit with a huge left hook and just completely no-sells it. Like, I don't know if that guy had no power or if he is just like a Terminator chin, but he literally gets hit with like a flush left hand, like stepping offline, never saw it coming, just like hit him clean right on the chin. And he completely no-sold it and knocked the guy out within like 10 seconds. And you're just like, okay, if he can do that, then Jeka is probably going to get absolutely decimated in this fight because Jusang Yu, I think, is the cleaner ground player by a pretty substantial margin. And on the feet, I think he's actually the better striker, like move for move, technique for technique, his slide, his ability. But I also think he's a big risk taker. You know, he does a lot of the hands down, like head movement stuff. And you do that one too many times, or you do that and step offline, you zig when you should have zagged, you get hit by Jeka and he puts you unconscious. So that for me is just like the one concern that I have for him in this fight. But skill for skill, I think he's clearly the better guy. After watching the tape, I think he's going to win this fight. If I saw Jeka training with Paddy Pimblett and, top level guys and really after it in the grappling, I would feel a little differently. But I just feel like the guy doesn't look that athletic to the eye test. To me personally, I think Ju Sang Yu looks very athletic, looks like he might be sauced to the gills. No accusations, just guessing and speculating. But when I look at those factors, I think that's big. And I think that, he didn't even get the road to UFC treatment, right? He's kind of just been kind of fast-tracked, right? So I think those are all positive signs in his direction. And I think he's probably going to get the win here, but price is really prohibitive for me. Anything you want to add there, Wiz?
No, nothing at all. I think we broke it down pretty accurately here, especially for a pretty big favorite. We hit on all the points.
Awesome. Well, then we're back at it. We've got Ariane Lipski taking on Cong Wang. How do you feel about this one, my brother? Women's 125-pound bout, 2-fight skid for Ariane Lipski coming into this one. Cong Wang was able to bounce back with a pretty forgettable decision against Bruna Brazil, but did what she needed to do. Got that bad taste out of her mouth, so to speak, from the tough result against Gabriela Fernandez. So how do you feel about this one? She's got another Brazilian opponent here, the queen of violence. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, this fight is going to be fun to watch. At first, when I was looking at the line, I was like, this is crazy. Now, after tape, I can kind of see why. Obviously, Ariane Lipski is going to have the strength of schedule advantage. She's going to have she's going to have a lot more experience fighting in the UFC than Cong has fought at all, just in total. And measurables line up. They're almost identical here for both height and reach. Now, where I think Ariane could maybe take advantage of Cong is if she's able to maybe land a takedown or get this fight to the mat and find some submission opportunities. But on the feet, I do get that Ariane Lipski or Ariane de Silva now is a decent striker. But my issue with her is her face is right on the center line. And secondly, she is too slow. I think Cong is a step, if not 2 steps faster than Ariane de Silva here in the striking, which is a big problem. Ariane's been knocked out 4 times now in her career, and I could see a world where this will be her 5th just due to the hand speed alone. Cong is very accurate when she strikes, and she does pack a punch. We've seen her knock out girls left and right, and she can take one. It took a very large Bruna Brazil to take the shots and give them back, to find Cong in a very precarious position on the ground and find a submission, which I do think that it's a possibility, as I mentioned earlier in the breakdown. But realistically speaking, I think Kong's speed is going to be too much for Ariane here, and I think she finds the knockout late in round 2, early round 3 here. So for me, I think it's a huge Cong spot, especially on a big pay-per-view. They probably want her to shine here. She's definitely the A side, and this may or may not be Ariane's last fight on her contract. So we'll see.
We see this one kind of differently, buddy. And, not to say I'm involved in this one, right? This for me is the kind of fight where I'm like, I should probably steer clear of this one entirely, right? Because I thought Cong Wang was, being groomed as like a future title challenger type of, woman, right? And I thought the Gabriela Fernandez fight was in line with that matchmaking, to tell you the truth. Going into that fight, I was like, is it going to be easy? Probably not, but like, is she the better girl? I thought she was. You look at her stats, they're incredible. Like, jump off the page good. But then you look at some of the opponents she's fought, and, Bruna Brazil is a girl that has the proximity to greatness, right? Trains at Fighting Nerds, and, she's got the size. She looks like she got the nickname, the special one. Like, you start going through the boxes, you're like, holy shit, this girl's good. And then you start watching the film, and you're like, man, she's really just all right. Having really competitive minutes with Shauna Bandon at points. You're just like, all right, maybe she's not as good as I thought. And Ariane Lipski, or Ariane de Silva, whatever we're going with now, I think that there's a clear difference between when she had not trained with Amanda Nunes and then when she had. Like her wrestling got substantially better, I felt. And the one thing that, like you mentioned, could be interesting about this fight is if she's able to get takedowns. Because the one truth about Cong Wang that we don't really have is what her ground game looks like when she's not fighting somebody outside the UFC. Because I'll give her a break, right? I always talk about the difference between grappling sober and not sober, right? And by sober, in this case, we of course mean after you just got kicked in the head, you're not really thinking clearly and making great decisions, right? You're like, where am I? Who are these people? Why are they yelling at me? Who's this person grabbing a hold of me? Like, you're not making very clear decisions when you've just been concussed. So Cong Wang gets concussed by a head kick and then is on the ground. I'm not going to say like you can't grapple because of that, right? For me, it's club and sub. What do you do, But on the other side of things, like because you submitted some opponents regionally, I honestly thought that there was like some interest I had like in, hey, maybe this girl could be a submission threat at the UFC level. Haven't seen it yet. On the other side with Lipski, I've seen it, Number one, the thing I want to give her credit for, you have to, again, give the same caveat. Like, I think Casey O'Neill may have been concussed by the time that Ariane started grappling with her, but she did show the right instincts there to finish that fight. Casey was trying to stay in it, and she kept moving to better positions and eventually was able to get her out of there. And I was pretty impressed by that. That armbar was pretty devastating. I think that when I saw as well, her ability to manipulate different limbs. She was able to go out there and get a knee bar in the UFC. Very rare submission, right? Obviously, you can joke about Luana Carolina, and I will at times. But when you talk about, how her skills have translated, she's now got multiple joint lock submissions. Like, that's not easy to do, For me, like, you've seen people go out there and with no skills or technique at all, just get strength locks, grab a hold of somebody's neck, squeeze until they can't breathe anymore. Like, that can happen, right? You can just pure athlete that. I think about Amanda Lemos choking Miranda Granger from like no hooks on the side, like just squeezed her head and she was literally like purple. Yeah, some athletes can do that, but joint locks are normally pretty sophisticated. It's not easy to joint lock somebody, especially at the UFC level. So I have been a little bit impressed with some of her offensive grappling. Defensively, it leaves a lot to be desired, right? But I think 4 of her last 5 fights, she's outlanded her opponent on significant strikes. And again, do I expect that against Cong Wang, who's got a great strike differential? No, unless she's the one in the driver's seat with the wrestling. So that for me is like the one really compelling question of this matchup. I have to go back and watch more tape. I'll be frank. This was not high on my priorities list. It's a massive favorite. But when I just look at like, could I get to a Lipski play? If I see enough in the offensive wrestling, I could. Early on in her career, guys, it was the opponent taking her down or no takedowns. Like it wasn't a thought, a consideration. And then in recent years, she's getting 2, 3 takedowns. She's kind of working her way back up to her feet against better girls. And you're like, man, maybe she's really made some substantive, improvements there. And by the way, kind of rare to see, a fighter with way more professional experience, way more, 27 pro fights. Obviously not across all the different combat disciplines, but strictly in mixed martial arts. She's had 27 professional fights. She's 31 years of age. Her opponent's 33. So you're getting the younger, bigger athlete at plus money who's got more MMA experience. It does check some initial boxes for me. So Lipski's giving me some red flag energy at points, like where I don't know if she's as violent as she used to be. I think she might have took violence out of her nickname, right? She's just the queen now. She's, maybe a little bit more docile, married now, got her home life together. Hey, hats off to her in all those phases, right? Nothing against her. But for me, if I see enough in the offensive wrestling phase, it would make it a dog or pass situation for me. All right. If you have nothing to add there, please go ahead, my man.
No, I was like, fair enough. Like, I can definitely see why you would favor the Lipski side, especially at the number. I mean, you can't really argue a dog shot at these kind of prices at all. So I get it.
Yeah, and that's all it is, man. Because for me, I don't think Lipski is like a title challenger in the division or something. But I thought Cong Wang was, and then she lost to Gabriela Fernandez. So I'm like, am I just dead wrong about that, or is it one blip, one complete aberration from the sample? And we're gonna get more answers about that on Saturday. But for me, that's why it makes it a dog or pass. All right. Next up, we got Khaos Williams and Andreas Gustafsson. the definition of a car crash fight. I think that Khaos Williams, way more UFC experience, but he's not a guy that has like, some game that is like a deep, evaluation of the MMA meta where he's shooting, single leg takedowns to double legs against the fence line and getting on top of people. And like, he doesn't really do a lot of that. He does a lot of 1-2s, low kicks, punching hard, intercepting guys when they go for calf kicks and they're standing on one foot. Like, that's been a lot of the Khaos Williams experience in the UFC. But I do think that I still have some question marks about Khaos Williams. I look for this guy's Instagram before we get on the air. You never see a picture of this guy in a training camp. I know that he came up from Murcielago MMA. With all due respect, I think that they've had mixed results in the UFC, to be charitable. And I think that they've had upside, right? Like, they've had guys that have done really well. So I'm not trying to take anything away from them. But if you, again, average out all the results of all the guys that have been there, there's been a couple of guys that held them down with the 0-4s and the 0-3s and the, not really being ready for prime time. So I think that Khaos Williams has been a great story out of there. And I believe he's also gotten in work with Justin Gaethje, Rafa Garcia. This is all from memory, though, because, again, you look for this on his Instagram, like, he's not posting about being in the gym and stuff all the time. So for me, I always have questions about Khaos and what he's going to bring to the table. And I feel like the Rolando Bedoya fight, marginally concerning for me, because he's allowing, a fight to be very close with a guy who has not proven himself to be UFC level. I believe he went 0-3 with the promotion, went down to 155. So a guy who's undersized at 170 pounds as well. And you look at Gustafsson, he's a big physical guy. He's going to look to push you into the fence. And I thought Gustafsson and Giles was a really tricky fight. I thought everybody was counting out Giles, but Giles is like one of these guys that wins a lot of minutes and looks really good and then dies randomly, which I thought was very liable to happen to him, but just like skill for skill, he was better than Gustafsson. And now I'm saying, like, I don't know exactly if Khaos Williams is better skill for skill. Like, I think he's probably better at kickboxing. Like, just like if these guys just had a kickboxing match, like, I think Khaos would win that. But the way that this fight could play out could be really grimy and disgusting, split decision type stuff, based on what I've been seeing from Khaos lately. Even if you think back to like the Matt Semmelsberger fight, like, that fight played out really close, and Semmelsberger went on to not hack it long term in the UFC. No disrespect again. So it's just like, when I look at these two guys and I juxtapose them, I don't know that one of them's like head and shoulders above the other. I think Khaos is a better athlete, more knockout power, faster with his hands, especially. Like, if you just want to stand a distance with Khaos, like, shit's probably going to go sideways for you. But I think if Gustafsson is going to fight like he normally does, he's going to try and put his head down, barrel into his chest, running backwards into the cage and try and make it a clinch fest. And I think that fight is a winnable fight for him. So for me, this is not the kind of fight where I want to be betting. The only time I ever bet on a Khaos Williams fight was against Michel Pereira, and I left sick to my stomach because Michel Pereira was pretty easily able to out-grapple him there. And I don't think Michel's like a horrible grappler, but we've seen Abus Magomedov go out there and show that, big physical guys can take him down, up at 185 pounds. Obviously, it was a minor miracle. He was making 170 back then, but I just felt like since that day forward, I kind of felt like Khaos wasn't who I thought he was. And I didn't think that I was seeing enough improvement fight over fight. He's still just 31 years of age, right? Could he have been off social media grinding away, in the gym? Absolutely. But that Bonfim fight was also, mildly concerning for me, because if he had gone out there and got smoked in the grappling, I would have literally said nothing. He didn't end up getting submitted, right? But he got kind of tooled up everywhere. Like, he was just getting beat. He was getting tuned up on the feet. Bonfim was moving around, jabbing on him, and I thought for all those reasons that I was not super sold on that Khaos Williams product. So I think Bonfim is a better fighter than Gustafsson and would probably beat him too. But I just say, Khaos Williams got to prove something to me right now before I'm willing to go back to, the well with him at a big chalk price. And on the other side for Gustafsson, he's got some intangibles here. He's kind of looking for any fight, right? So he had to accept this one. He was supposed to fight somebody else. Guys just doing his job for the UFC, like, hey, keep me in, coach, like, do whatever you need. But he also probably was cutting weight already, had to stop his process, restart his process. Your body does not normally take well to that when you're older. Again, 34 isn't old, but it's a little bit older, cutting back to 170 pounds now. That could be a factor for me. So I want to see weigh-ins for this fight, see where Andreas Gustafsson comes in, how he's feeling, how he's looking. But ultimately, I think he's another potential live underdog spot just because right now I'm not seeing everything I want to at a Khaos fight over fight. How do you feel about this one, Wiz?
Yeah, I've seen some pretty passionate takes on both sides for this fight. And I'm stuck somewhere in the middle, if I'm being honest. I mean, both these guys, we know what we're getting with Gustafsson. I mean, he even posted it on his story last week before he was supposed to fight. He said he was going to go full retard, full R word. And then we go to the Khaos Williams side, and we just don't really see much from him on Instagram. We don't see too much training content. We don't see him in the gym all that often, but he still goes out there and he performs. So credit to him. Measurables are almost identical here, except for 3 inches of reach to the Khaos side in terms of an advantage. Now, both guys, we kind of know what kind of fighter they are. Khaos is more of a stand-up fighter. He just wants to keep you at range and land some power shots. And Gustafsson is the type of fighter that will run at you with no hands in his face, just no striking defense. He's going to go take you all the way to the cage and try to cage push you for 15 minutes if he can. If not, he'll try and knock you out in the clinch. He has some very dangerous striking in the clinch, nasty elbows. And you know what? I think he's going to be able to push Khaos back, because the one thing about Khaos is he throws a lot of singular shots. And whenever you're a fighter that throws a lot of singular shots, you're always going to be susceptible to pressure. Whether it's for a short term or long term, that is going to be dependent on the opponent. But if you're throwing singular shots, that means you're just waiting. You're waiting for a counter opportunity, or you're waiting for someone to make a mistake. And that's just not going to work well here against Gustafsson, because sure, Khaos, I think he could land a couple of big ones on the entry from Gustafsson. But, I mean, there's no guarantee that they'll put him out. And I think Gustafsson can out-muscle Khaos in the clinch. I think he's going to be the much stronger guy here. But it's yet to be seen. We've seen it at the regional level and the European regional scene, and I have grown to not trust that regional scene all that often. We've seen a lot of guys come up from that scene, and they just don't pan out all that well in the UFC. So it's a little bit tricky in that aspect, which is why he's an underdog. All that being said, I think Gustafsson has a shot here of wrecking Khaos's night, and I think he'll be able to land a decision here. I really like the decision price at plus 800. For me, two guys who have proven to be durable throughout their UFC careers. I know this one is a little bit out of left field, but when you really think of it, if Khaos wants to win, he wants to stay on the outside striking from distance. And Gustafsson wants to win, he wants to take you to the clinch and really beat you up with the hands and the elbows. Both fighting styles, I do see how this fight could go, the decision. I don't know.
It's funny. Look at the duality of man. We've got Daz Files in the chat says plus 180 GTD. And then we've got Monotone Betting, a very sharp guy I respect, says don't trust Gustafsson at all. Khaos by Khaos. Give me the under. So we literally have the GTD and the under back to back in the chat. Chat is divided on this fight, and we don't really know what to make of it either. So expect variance here, folks.
Oh, yeah, it's a crazy fight. It's one of those fights where you just can't get the best read on because we don't know too much about Gustafsson at this level. If we had at least one fight to work off of, it would have been a little bit easier to predict. And then also, I mean, Khaos could just be a huge step up. Go ahead, Liam.
I think we have one indicator that Gustafsson could be on this level, which is the Joelton Luderbach fight. Because if you remember, I actually bet Joelton Luderbach for his UFC debut that got canceled before he ever had it because he admitted he was on steroids. Not a good idea if you guys are moving forward, just by the by. But in any case, the guy is basically like a UFC level guy that was juiced to the tits on the regionals, and he admitted as much, which is why he didn't get the job. But he basically was signed to the UFC. They had spotlighted him as a guy to bring forward. He is like hit and miss in his career, but he's clearly got skills. He's just a blown up juice guy. So ultimately, blown up juice guy, they had a very competitive decision together, and they're both like fringe UFC level as far as I'm concerned. Like, not guys that will have lengthy careers, but the guys that could come in, win a spastic fight, juice to the tits. And the concern for me on the Gustafsson side, I will say, is he used to look more juicy to me. If this guy was still popping veins in the neck, like this is why this is a weigh-in fight for me, because I'm like, if this guy shows up looking like he's sauced to the gills, I'll feel a lot better. But he looked way more sauced in some of the regional footage I saw than when he showed up on Contender Series. I thought he was going to lose to Pat Pitlick, and he absolutely smashed his face. So what do I know? Hats off to the guy. Oh, man. Next up, we've got maybe the people's main event. You know, certainly one of the fights that's been identified as the people's main event. We got very close odds on this one, my guy. We got Serghei Polar Bear Spivac taking on Salsa Boy Waldo Cortes-Acosta. And my man, I'll lead us off here, because at the beginning of the week, I said to myself, you know, Waldo at a dog price is interesting to me. I've bet him at a dog price before, you know, gone to the window with him when he was fighting, what's his name, Robelis de Spain, the ultimate hype job. That was one of my favorite bets of the year, right? I think he was like plus 200 in that spot. But ultimately, that fight is the reason why I think Serghei Spivac is going to win this fight. And I'll tell you exactly why. When I look back at that fight, when I look at the fight at the time, I thought Waldo could submit this guy straight up, because I was like, yo, Robelis de Spain, he don't have it on the ground. I was like, this guy doesn't have it figured out on the ground, period, point blank. And I had some reason to believe when he first got to the UFC that he could figure it out. He's a big athlete, you know, the guy's Olympic pedigree. But when I started doing my research, I'm like, man, he just doesn't have it figured out on the ground. So I then start looking into this fight. I'm like, okay, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, very fun, you know, dynamic on the outside at times, but he's also had some stinker decisions, right? Arlovsky, you know, a couple of these guys kind of dragged him out there, kept him around, you know. Then you look at where he's had some struggles and still won the fight. Thomas Peterson in the LFA takes him down multiple times, gets to the top position, but he's working back up to his feet and he's keeping the guy working. And eventually it's Thomas Peterson that runs out of steam, right? Goes for a takedown, shitty takedown from the outside, doesn't get it. And Waldo starts going off on him instead, you know, flips the script on him. So ultimately, that fight and the fight that he had with Rogerio de Lima, you know, a guy just gets on top of him, sets up, moves to, you know, I don't even think he got many dominant positions. He mostly just split the two legs in the guard and held him down with head to the chest. So I look at Waldo and I say his ground game isn't there for me, you know? And if this guy was training with the best high-level pros every day, I'd feel a little differently. But I'm not seeing that. Again, it's one of these guys, Jeka Saragih. If I'm seeing him train with these top-level guys, then I'm saying, okay, maybe there's a chance he's made these huge improvements. But the truth is, Serghei Spivac, since 2019, has been taking down guys that are, you know, tied to Avasa, and these guys dominating them on the ground, bully ball on the ground. You know, I throw the Derek Lewis fight out from the sample because Derek Lewis literally like fell and hit his head the night before and was in the hospital and all this shit. Like, I throw that fight out for me, but basically every other fight that this guy has had a wrestling advantage, Greg Hardy and all these things, takes him down, beats him up on the ground. So the question of the fight is simply, can Serghei Spivac get takedowns? And I think he can. So if I think he can, then I think he's going to dominate the fight. If he can't get takedowns, I think he's going to get fucked up because I think he's a little bit slower. I think Waldo's a little more confident on the feet, a little bit more willing to let it go with the hands. But if Serghei Spivac has his way with the takedowns, I don't think this will be particularly competitive. And the difference between him and Thomas Peterson is that Serghei Spivac is legit on top. And he knows exactly how to get to the positions that he wants and finish people because he goes for submissions and he goes for heavy ground and pound. And I just think with Waldo, you know, again, he's taken down to Spain and he's just hanging out, you know, holding the guy down, not passing the guard very well, not looking competent on the ground, bro. Serghei Spivac would have fucking passed that guy's guard so fast, your head would spin. He would have been in the mount in the first 30 seconds of that fight. And for me, that's the difference between these two guys. One guy is a real jiu-jitsu guy, shark versus a fish. If it gets down there, I think he will beat him up, bloody him up, and then finish him on the ground. So for me, it's Serghei Spivac. I think he's going to win the fight. How about you, Wiz?
Ditto. Yeah, I mean, I don't really feel the need to add anything. I think you've summed it up pretty well. I think Serghei Spivac, if he's able to land his takedowns, it's his fight to lose. Now, if this fight stays standing for longer than a round, then I think he's in a world of trouble. I do understand that Serghei Spivac has been facing the cream of the crop in terms of competition, and Waldo Cortes-Acosta has not. I just feel like this is a fight where Serghei Spivac can easily land takedowns. I think the level difference between the two guys is quite significant. So the minus 140 price tag is a little bit puzzling to me, but it could indicate that the market's respecting Waldo Cortes-Acosta's takedown defense a little bit more than it should. Now, we also saw this guy eat a million leg kicks from Chase Sherman, and any other fighter probably would have finished that fight with leg kicks if it wasn't Chase Sherman. They're just being honest. So for me, I think the grappling upside and wrestling upsides on the Spivac side. Leg kick offense, it doesn't really throw too many leg kicks, so I don't know if he'll be as worried. But the takedown offense on its own will give Waldo some pause and some hesitation from walking Spivac down. And I think that's something that's going to also play into the game plan a little bit. If Waldo is offensively on the front foot and being aggressive with his jab as he usually is, it could leave openings for counter takedowns. I think that's just the easiest way for Spivac to get him down. And with Spivac, it's not the traditional type of takedowns that he goes for. He's not going for singles and doubles. He's going for the Greco-Roman style, and he's going for body locks, which is a lot easier to get on the back foot rather than needing to be on the front foot with singles and doubles. It's a lot harder doing it on the back foot when you're looking for double legs. So I think that just plays into the skill set of Spivac. And whether it's an overextension of Waldo's striking to the takedown, or whether it's just offensively pushing Waldo against the cage, grabbing the body, and kind of sagging him down to the ground, I think both will be successful here, and Spivac should be the rightful favorite.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot about where Waldo's at as a prospect, because for me, if he's able to defend the takedowns and beat up a guy like Spivac, then he's ready for prime time. You know, he's like a guy that is going to have a meaningful, chance to push his way forward in this division. But if he's not, it's going to kind of reveal where he's really at and what his weaknesses are. And I don't know that we've seen his wrestling and grappling really tested at a high level. But the times that we've seen it, it has not looked very good. And for me, the difference with Serghei Spivac is his losses in the last few years. Jailton Almeida, I think he's a threat for a title. Ciryl Gane, a guy who's literally fought for the title, and could fight for the title again. Tom Aspinall, current champion. So those are guys that it's like, yeah, I think that Waldo would get absolutely decimated by each and every one of those guys. So honestly, I see it. So if that's the case, then, it's a tough sell. I think Serghei Spivac, he's lost to those guys, but he's gone out there and beat a Marcin Tybura. Would Marcin Tybura beat Waldo? Let's find out if these takedowns are easy money, because if they are, Marcin probably would have beat him too. What did Marcin just do to Jonata Diniz? That for me is the fight that is like in the back of my mind here, because Jonata Diniz is a scary guy on the feet. You take down a scary guy on the feet, you put him on their back, and then you punch him in the face a bunch of times. They have blood coming out. They're scared of their own blood. It's not a good scene. So it's just like that for me is where Spivac has a lot of upside. Guys that I don't like at times in the grappling phase are guys that don't take advantage of top position. If I had to criticize a guy I'm a massive fan of, Jafel Filo, he got many great positions against Nascimento and spent the whole time trying to submit him. I called it a black belt measuring contest. He wanted to make it. I'm the better black belt. And he outgrappled him for 7 minutes, but he lost the fight. And it's because instead of just taking the guy's wrist and punching him in the face as hard as he can 5 times, he's trying to get the rear naked choke and the rear naked choke. It's like, yeah, we can't get the rear naked choke. Let's punch him in the face. Let's do some damage. Let's make the guy want to quit. And for me, Serghei Spivac, on top of Tai Tuivasa, he's punching him in the face, punching him in the face, punching him in the face, go for a head and arm choke, but half-heartedly, right? He basically said, hey, do you want to go home yet? Tai kind of moves a little. He goes, okay, punch him 5 more times. You want to go home yet? Yeah, thank you. Please give me the door. Okay, and I get out of there. That's it. So for me, I look at Serghei Spivac and I also say that fight against Marcin Tybura, shows a massive improvement over time. I mean, you go back and watch the first time they fought, it was big bank, take little bank. Marcin Tybura just gave him a tour of the octagon. Not saying he was having the fight of his life against him, but to go out there and flip the script, get a different result, kind of showed, hey, maybe Serghei Spivac making some improvements over time. And I look at this data point, right? 4.5 takedowns per 15 minutes against a guy with a 66% takedown defense rate against lower level opposition for the most part. For me, this is a Waldo's got to prove it spot. If we were talking about Serghei Spivac minus 300, I would again be pushing back. Like, whoa, guys, this is a heavyweight fight. But this is the kind of fight where it's a rare favorite or pass situation for me, just because I don't see many worlds in which Waldo looks like a massive hindsight favorite, unless he knocks him out in the first round. And then you say, hey, that's always a liability. It's a heavyweight fight. But, man, I just feel like I look at this side and I'm like, if Serghei is getting one takedown in the first round and this guy can't get up, he's probably going to pass his guard and finish the fight, And it's like, if he doesn't finish the fight, I think it's like 10-9, 10-8 rounds. Like, it's a disaster every time he gets taken down, I feel. So that's the way I see it, man. It's like, even people talked about Derek Lewis getting back up to his feet and stuff. Like, Derek was getting back up, using all his explosion, right? All his, power, explosivity, anything he had to get back to his feet. And Serghei Spivac, holding the lock around his waist, would just put a foot behind his foot, trip him back over. Now he's got to use all that energy again. And meanwhile, dude's just holding on to a little gable grip, holding around the waist. Let him use his energy. Let him buck around. He does a really great job. So for me, I feel like Serghei Spivac just has a lot more paths to looking like a big favorite here. And that is ultimately, what I'm looking for. So it's the heavyweight division. I'm not getting out of my skis, but it just feels to me like Serghei Spivac is the right side after I did my research. Anything to add, Wizz?
How many times have we seen Derek Lewis get up like that? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's like his whole game, He's got the best blue belt in Texas. He said that a million times, and I believe him. So, hey, my man, next up, we've got a fascinating fight. We've got the return of the professional, Azamat Murzakanov. And I put it this way on Twitter the other day. Azamat Murzakanov is just in the UFC to come back and murk somebody once a year. He just lives to go get one body a year, put somebody on the highlight reel. Then he goes back to relative obscurity. I think 2 years ago, I put this guy on my list for MMA dark horses ranked 10 through 15 in their division. You'd have never seen him since, right? Like Azamat Murzakanov, unless you're a deep UFC fan, you don't even know who this guy is, but he is a Jersey-based fighter, I believe. I think he's a K-Dojo guy as well, if memory serves. And when you watch this guy fight, he takes his time. He's not a guy that rushes anything. He's kind of like out there feeling it out. But when he starts letting them fangs fly, bodies hit the floor. He can just knock people out with the hands. He's very clinical. The professional is kind of a good nickname for him, man. He's an assassin-like character. And the funniest fight that he had in the UFC was way back when he fought Tafon and Chukwi. And I actually bet him there, minus 143. And I was like, what are we doing, man? He's standing out there. He's kind of pawing with the jab, like kind of trying to draw reactions all night, not really doing much, not committing to much offense. And I started to worry. I'm like, man, Azamat, he's not really throwing much, man. He's not really giving me much here. Is he going to let this one slip through his fingers? How is he going to lose it to Tafon Chukwi? And then in the third round, he just says, yeah, I've had enough of this bullshit. Just sprints across the cage, flying knee to the face, knockout win for Azamat Murzakanov. I was like, so that's why he's never lost a fight before. The guy finds a way to win, plain and simple. And on the other side, Brenson Iberio, he's a guy that's barely found a way to win, right? He's found a way to lose in many of his fights. I go back to the Magomed Gaziasulov fight. I'll never forgive him for that. I called Brenson Iberio via guillotine choke in the second round, guys. Go back and watch that fight and then cry for me. Say a prayer for me. It was brutal. What the worst run out maybe of my gambling life. I had him by sub. Everything was going according to plan. And then he sold on me. So when you look at Brenson Iberio, he clearly has skills. He's a killer be killed fighter. He has what I would call aggressive blue belt jiu-jitsu. I do not think he's very good at jiu-jitsu, but he does go for it, right? He does attempt offense at times. But truthfully, he's just all aggro, right? The defense, it's not always there. On the feet, the guy is liable to be knocked out, but he's dangerous and can knock somebody out as well. So for me, Azamat Murzakanov could get chin checked in this one, right? He doesn't fight that often, 36 years of age. Anything's possible, right? Brenson's a big guy, much bigger than Azamat. So when you look at this fight, again, I mentioned on my stream however many days ago, for me, this feels like it's a dogger pass line. Like it's light heavyweight, it's plus 400. But what do you think's going to happen? You say, hey, Liam, what do you think's the expected outcome here? Azamat Murzakanov should knock this guy the F out, right? He's a better fighter, he's a faster fighter, higher level fighter. A lot of things to like about him, but he's a smaller fighter. He's the older fighter. He's not the most active guy in the UFC. Like Brenton Iberio is speed running a UFC career while this guy is at home. So there's a lot to say for activity and being big and being young and getting on a cycle and doing things right. You know, maybe Brenton has it for this one, but ultimately I'm just not a Brenton Iberio guy. You know, I feel like that Magomed Gadzhiesulov fight told me everything I needed to know. The guy can fumble a very winnable fight. He can go out there, blow it on cardio. He can go out there, look really bad, and make bad decisions. And I think Azamat Murzakanov on the other side had one sloppy fight in the UFC where he won the fight by knockout. And other than that, he's been aces his whole career. So I think Azamat's going to knock this guy's spark out.
Yeah, I second that. I think this is probably the easiest fight on the card to call, if I'm being quite honest. I understand the huge reach advantage and the height advantage for Brenton, but for what he has in height and reach, he lacks in speed. And Azamat's a guy who, yeah, the age says 36, but if this guy is 36, and then I'm 72, he's probably double his age. But the man's fast with his striking. I've always loved going back and watching some of his fights just to see the hand speed, dude. You just don't see that at 205. That combined with the accuracy, and with Brenton being known as somewhat of a, not somewhat, being known for being a glass cannon, like with all emphasis on the phrase, I think Azamat's going to find a round one knockout here. And I think it should come quick, probably within the first minute to minute and a half. I would not be surprised.
Wow, yeah, my man Wizz wants the gone in 60 seconds bonus here.
I'm betting it. I'm putting my money where my mouth is on this one. I think within 90 seconds, Brenton Ribeiro is on the mat.
I could definitely see it, man. I wanted to just say, you know, if you look back at that Bruno Lopez fight, excuse me, people crucify me in the comments.
Oh yeah, we heard him last week.
I apologize. But what I tried to say is that I didn't think he had a great chin, and I wasn't really buying the hype when he fought Brenton Iberio all that time back on Contender Series. I was like, Brenton Iberio plus 4XX has to be the play. Like, I was like, if you're on a money line, it just has to be. And I remember Bruno was like the hyped guy for like that week on Contender, and he got smoked out there. But now we've seen him get smoked out in the UFC. We saw him struggle against Magomed Gadzhiesulov at times. Y'all know how I feel about that. So ultimately, I just think that Brenton, you know, he's had a fortunate run of opponents in terms of who the guys he's beat, you know, at this level. Ming Yang Zhang, that's an unfortunate run out in terms of who you lost to, right? Like Ming Yang Zhang's going to beat you, but the Gadzhiesulov fight, it's one I can't really forgive. So Azamat Murzakanov is a pick for me. I think he's getting it done by knockout, but unlike my buddy Wiz, I give it round one or two. You know, I give him some time. Sometimes he likes to let his work, you know, kind of manifest. You know, he's like, I like to let the shot come to me, but maybe he goes out there in front of his Jersey faithful and he's like, you know what? No more playing games. I'm sprinting across, getting a flying knee knockout and being done with it already. So would love to see it. Either way, meme violence I'm expecting here. This is one where I definitely lean towards unders, just in principle. Brenton Iberio is a typical under fighter. He's had a couple fights go to decision in the UFC. In my opinion, those are anomalous. Go watch the rest of his career. Guys out there swanging them things, looking for crazy finishes. And again, you know, if he didn't make a critical error against Magomed Gadzhiesulov, he did everything but submit him with a mounted guillotine choke in the second round. So the guy goes for finishes. You know, he's looking to finish the fight, and he will gas himself out trying otherwise. So the people that were saying Ribeirio's cardio should be better in the chat, I mean, it definitely looked moderately better in those most recent UFC fights. But, guys, there are definitely examples of him looking pretty gassed pretty early in fights as well. And I think the Gadzhiesulov fight is an example where the guy basically had 6.5 minutes. So, give me Azamat. All right, guys. Next up, we got Bruno Silva taking on Joshua Van, and we've got another big favorite, my brother. Joshua Van installed as a massive favorite in this fight, and I think that when you talk about like Josh Van, for me, it's a question of You know, when is he going to fight for the UFC title? Not is he going to fight for the UFC title? I think he's that good. I think he's that complete right now at 23 years of age. And he's only destined to get better on the ground. You know, one thing that you can't make up for is time on the ground, time on the mat. I truly believe that it's very hard to get good. You know, some guys pick up striking fast, you know, and if you hit somebody real hard and you're moving quickly, it doesn't always take the greatest sophistication, right? Sometimes you just hit them right. You're a fast mover. You can get the right patterns going, or you just have unnatural power, right? You touch somebody, they don't move no more. Guys just have that ability, right? But it's very rare to just see like, hey, this guy picked up jiu-jitsu a week and a half ago and now he won the Mundials. It's like BJ Penn, rare example of like a guy who picks up jiu-jitsu and he starts winning major tournaments shortly thereafter. It's not easy, right? Nicky Rod, there's few and far between examples, but I just look at a guy like Josh Van and I say, man, this guy gets more time on the mats and he's going to be sensational. You know, you look at his early MMA losses. He got submitted one time where, hey, he's young out there. He goes against a guy with better skills at the time on the ground, takes him out. All right, fair enough. Then you see him, he gets knocked out by Charles Johnson. Okay, you know, a little bit concerning because Charles not the biggest power guy, but then you just look at the level of activity, the fact he's so young, the fact he's always constantly out there putting himself in the fire. You're bound to get caught eventually. It's a combat sport. So do I have some concerns about the durability? Minor. But other than that, I just think that this kid is aces. The pace is incredible. The ability to land significant strikes, to D-up takedowns as well. Ray Saruya going out there really attempting takedowns from the bottom of his heart in the first round. Like he was desperate for them. He was having a very hard time. Josh Van's just D'ing him up, making it hard for him, making him work, making him suffer for the takedown attempts as well. And I think that he's just a problem for everybody right now. Like I don't think a lot of guys are going to want to deal with Josh Van. The guys that are very, very good grapplers can get ahead of him right now, maybe take him down, you know, put him through the paces. But other than that, I think this guy's ready for most challenges in this division. On the other side, Bruno Silva, a very good fighter. You know, I have no real criticisms of him in terms of his skills, but I will say, you know, he's a guy that's had some, you know, fights go his way where he was losing almost every minute, right? Cody Durden is kind of whooping his ass and showing him what time it is and putting him through the paces. And then he goes out there, lands a big counter, knocks his mouthpiece out and finishes him. Like Bruno's got power. He's a dangerous guy, you know, stays lethal throughout the fight. Tyson Nam fight, hits him, hurts him, puts him down, follows him to the ground. Great finishing instincts there, club and sub potential. So the guy's clearly got great finishing skills. But on the other side, you know, he's a 35-year-old flyweight. He's a guy that, you know, has definitely taken some losses. He's definitely taken some damage over the years. And, you know, that last time out, a brutal one, right, against Manel Cap. So now he's coming back against Josh Van, guy that's going to put more damage on you. He's going to put them hands on you. And, you know, I just don't know that Bruno's going to be able to take those shots that are coming back for the full 15. You know, I think that if he's able to put hands on Josh and get some respect, you know, maybe keep him honest, fair enough. You know, I think that's his way to stay in this fight is to either get an opportunistic finish or discipline him with power. But if he's not able to do that, man, I think that Josh Van is just going to overwhelm him over time. He throws too much offense. He stays in your face too much. He pressures forward too hard. And guys will have success on him in round one sometimes, but they really struggle to keep it going in the second and the third rounds. And I don't know that Bruno's going to get out ahead of him in the first either. If Josh is, you know, making improvements fight over fight, which I hope that he is, then he should be the one dictating in this fight, you know, using his speed. I think he's going to be the much faster guy in terms of hands in this fight. And I think that he's got to be smart, you know, avoid the grappling here. But if he's able to D-up takedowns like he has in his recent fights, yeah, I think this is Josh Van's fight to lose. So how do you feel about this one, Wiz? Certainly a big line, but I just think that the right guy's favored here.
Yeah, I'm going to make it 2 for 2 on that one. And one thing that I'm going to add here, since you really laid the fight out pretty well, I'm personally looking at the Josh Van by KO props here and late round 3 props. Because, look, I personally think that Josh Van hits harder than Manel Kape. And another thing, Bruno Silva just took a hell of a beating from Kape. And this was only 5 months ago. It was not long ago at all. And the fact that it was more of an attritional-based finish makes it even worse. I really think that Van can easily knock this guy out. Bruno Silva is a dog. He's tough. And he has some good striking of his own, with all due respect to him. But I just think that he's meeting a buzzsaw here. At 35 years of age, he's at a 12-year age disadvantage. We already know the stat. We're not going to bring it up again. But Joshua Van here is going to be the much faster striker. He's going to be the much powerful guy. And I just think that Bruno Silva is going to be on the back foot from second one, bell to bell. So for me, Josh Van is, as you mentioned, a future title contender. More importantly, I think he's a future champion. This kid is only 23 years old, and he's already competing at this level with some of the greatest guys in the division. Just wait until he doesn't even need a submission game. But imagine this guy builds a jiu-jitsu game and a wrestling game into his arsenal. Dude will be unstoppable. So for me, I think it's a Van KO, and I think it's a KO 3.
I mean, if you look back at the Chairez fight, he's clearly willing to go attempt subs, right? Like he's fallen back for leg locks. You know, the guy is clearly willing to attempt offense and opposition. Shout out to my guy Jewish Better in the chat. Says Silva Loki has 3 sub losses on his record. It shows 1. That's true. I think it was Khalid Taha may have submitted him with a rear naked choke back in the day. And I think that got scrubbed because Khalid Taha was on a Lato juice in that one, a Lato juice. But if you look at where we're at for this fight, you know, I do think Josh is getting better in the grappling all the time. I think he's a 5-ounce guy. 4-ounce guy. And 5 ounce. I think he's a 4-ounce guy, and that's Daniel Pineda and company. You know, dangerous black belt. You know, Daniel Pineda, very quality. So for me, you know, a lot of people are talking about Van 2 and 3. I think that Jewish Better talking about round 2 and 3, maybe absent of method. I kind of agree with that as well. Bruno Silva's tough as an old leather boot. You know, you would have to really clip him in the first round to get him out of there. But I do think it's more likely it will be sustained offense. And you got to remember, guys, when guys start to get tired, fatigued, hurt, you don't always know how they're going to react. I do think Bruno Silva would not surprise me if he starts getting busted up and starts going for takedowns, starts shooting. And Josh Van, who's shown a willingness to attempt subs, has that opportunity. So shout out to Jewish Better. I think that's a great point. And shout out to my guy, Wizz, in the chat here. The Monkey King getting the job done. So shout out to him. I know my guy Wizz, you know, got some moves in, some rounds in, I think, with the Monkey King. So hats off to him. You got the good luck charm, but if you don't have anything to add on this fight, brother, we can move right along to the main card.
Not at all. As I mentioned earlier, these fights, we may or may not be moving a little bit quicker through them because these price tags don't allow for too much elaboration. But we're getting a couple of fights coming up that have a lot to discuss.
Absolutely. Next up, my brother, we got the main card opener. I have said for a long time, if you're going to bet a Kevin Holland fight, call Big Mouth. I've done quite well betting Kevin Holland fights over the years, but I will also say credit to the community where it's due. If you go back and look on BetMMA.tips, how is the community done handicapping a fighter? Kevin Holland is the best handicap fighter on the card. And people have made money fading Kevin Holland. That's the truth, man. People have not made as much money going to the window backing Kevin Holland. They've made a lot more money fading Kevin Holland over time. Every matchup is a new situation, right? On the other side, you've got Vicente Luque, 33 years old, 32 years old for Kevin Holland, very similar. Both guys that are highly experienced, both in and out of the UFC. So as far as I'm concerned, man, it's an excellent matchup. I'm going to kick it over to you first. How do you feel about this one, brother?
Yeah, first thing I'll throw out there, this fight's at 170, obviously. So we can expect at least a more motivated Kevin Holland. We've kind of grown to know that the 185 version of Kevin Holland, the middleweight version of Kevin Holland, is just not valuable. Unfortunately, he's just too small for the division, doesn't cut enough weight, and ends up just giving up too much size to these guys. But at 170, he's proven to be quite the commodity. And going up against a guy in Vicente Luque, who not too long ago was suffering internal brain bleeding after the Jeff Neal loss. And, you know, man, it was scary for him. He didn't know if he was going to continue fighting. And then for me, I just think that this fight is Holland's to lose. If he's able to keep Vicente at the edge of his punches, I could see multiple ways of Holland winning, whether it's by decision, whether it's a submission, or whether it's knockout. But I think the most likely opportunity here for Holland is to knock Vicente Luque out. someone that's really not all there in the health department when it comes to Luque, from what I'm hearing. It's just a sign of hesitance when it comes to A, backing the guy, but B, just continuing fighting in general. A couple of doctors recommended him to stop fighting after the injury, and he came back and looked pretty decent against, you know, RDA, and lost to Buckley, obviously. That was a scary one, getting knocked out. And then you look at the Themba Gorimbo fight, won by submission. That was quick. Shout out to Themba. Used to work with him. And in this fight, I think Colin's going to be smart and keep this fight standing. I don't think he wants to give Vicente Luque a shot here. I think Vicente is going to try and be the one that's offensively wrestling and going for submissions here, while Holland's going to probably want to keep the fight upright, keep Vicente at the edge of his punches. And I just don't think Vicente Luque's durability is going to be the same as we've once known it to be. So Kevin Holland knockout is something that's interesting me here, but plus 140 is just not doing the job. So then you look towards the submission side, and you're getting plus 600, which I see the window for it, especially if Luque is shooting. Now, can we count on Luque to consistently shoot takedowns? Probably not, but we saw him against RDA employ that offensive strategy, especially after getting brutally knocked out by Jeff Neal. I think he kind of had to. So if he's doing that, I could see a world where Holland darces him, front chokes him. He has a really nice front choke series. But all this to say, I just don't think this is a good fight for Luque at all, and this may or may not be his last. So for me, I think it's Holland all the way, and I think it's time for him to put up a little bit of a run in the division.
I think this fight is interesting, man. When I look at this fight, I'll just tell you guys, first of all, one of the things that I normally do is just go off instinct, like who do I think is going to win before I do any research, just so I have an idea of like what I'm working with. And then I do my research, see if it aligns. I thought Kevin Holland would win this fight when I first heard it announced. I thought he was going to knock out Vicente Luque on instincts. And the reason I felt that way is for a number of reasons, and I'm happy to lay them out very quickly. Number one, I think Kevin Holland at 170 pounds is a relevant guy, a guy that's worth considering. I picked him against Jack Della Maddalena. I think he's the only guy that I picked to beat Jack in his recent run. You know, I picked Jack to beat Bilal Muhammad, right? Obviously in a title fight situation. And if you go back to that prediction, I picked Kevin Holland via split decision. I was like, these two guys are both durable. They both hit hard. They're both good boxers. I was like, it's probably going to be a pretty close competitive fight. It was a split decision, goes the other way. And, you know, so Kevin Holland in recent times going competitive split decisions with the current champion of the weight class. On the other side of things, you know, Vicente Luque fought RDA, and I thought it was a tailor-made matchup for him in a lot of ways. I think I picked him by knockout, so I was wrong, right? I didn't think he was going to go out there and wrestle him all night, but I did say if he wants to mix in the wrestling, he's a big guy. You know, Vicente Luque, where did his career go sideways? I'm old enough to remember. Do you remember, Wiz? His career went sideways when he missed weight as a backup fighter, when he was supposed to be the backup for a Kamaru Usman title fight, and he missed weight, and it was literally like, bro, this is the one time you needed to make weight. You know, it's like you're the backup fighter, you're this close to a title opportunity, and he fucked it up. And then he lost to Bilal Muhammad. If you remember, they had a rematch of a fight where Vicente absolutely brutally knocked him out, and then Bilal dominated him, like not competitive. And you go back and watch. I thought at the time, like, man, maybe Vicente is like just shot. But I truly believe the biggest thing that happened in that fight was Bilal Muhammad is a very smart guy, did a lot of research, right? And he realized if you fight this guy out of southpaw, he is just a different guy. Like you could get off on this guy from southpaw. And dude, Bilal Muhammad fought him the first time and just got absolutely outclassed. And he fights him the second time, switches to southpaw, and completely dominates the fight. And you're just like, oh, it was that easy, right? Like that was all it took for him, right? Bilal made one major adjustment and absolutely look at Jeff Neal. You know, Jeff Neal is a powerful guy, right? He's a big hitter. He's got power in his hand. He's a southpaw. And he was able to put big power on Vicente Luque. Frankly, that fight's uncomfortable to rewatch, right? Like he absolutely assaulted him with big uppercuts over and over. Vicente's like, ding, ding, just getting Pez dispenser, dude. And everybody before the RDA fight was telling me there's no chance Vicente will ever be able to win a fight again because of the brain bleed and all this stuff. And I was like, is RDA like a massive knockout artist? Not really. You know, like he's a guy that has a couple of cool knockouts on his record, but most of the time he's grinding people out to decisions. What's that?
I fell victim to that one. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but that was big. Dude,
it happens to the best of us. It happens to the best of us. But the point being was, I kind of just thought, I was like, man, RDA is a former 155. Like if Vicente could out wrestle somebody here, it's the 155 guys. You know, if you look at how RDA struggled, it's not that he's not good at 170. It's that guys are too big body. Like they're just able to push him around, bully him against the fence, hold him down, make him wrestle over and over because he just can't get them off of him, right? Like the Colby fight. Bro, RDA was almost a welterweight champion. People forget this. But, bro, it was a 3-2 fight with Colby, and Colby just had just enough with the takedowns, just enough with the pressure, just enough holding him against the fence. But it's kind of like that was what I saw. I was like, bro, Vicente Luque is big body, right? He missed weight because he's so big for 170. Like, the guy's cutting weight to make it. At 170, I feel like Kevin Holland is a guy that could really play. He could play for keeps at 170. And by the way, I told people I thought his grappling was better than people realize. I've always said this about Kevin. Go back and watch the fact he takes down Brendan Allen, takes his back early. It's like, this guy can grapple. Problem is, at 185 pounds, he has to overcompensate, use all his strength, all his energy to try and grapple with these guys because otherwise they're going to outmuscle him and out-hustle him over the course of the long fights. And Derek Brunson laid out a masterclass in how to do that as a plus 150 underdog. Shout out to the Gibbs gang, right? D2 and D3 wrestling. Stand up, baby. It's not just the D1 guys that play for keeps, right? Derek Brunson, D2 All-American. Told him what time it was. Now you look at Kevin Holland at 170 pounds. Gunnar Nelson, guys, again, he's a guy that doesn't get the credit and respect he deserves. He was, frankly, very close to a welterweight title shot in his prime. Then he kind of fucked off to Iceland and didn't fight so often. But I look back at that fight and I say, Kevin showed his grappling core competencies. He was in bad situations against a very talented black belt. And not only did he not get submitted, but he was able to get back out, return to his feet, hurt Gunnar Nelson on the feet multiple times. And I just feel that fight was Kevin saying, like, guys, I get it. I need to win fights right now in my career. I have been fucking around for too long. You go back and look at that fight he had against Michal Oleksiejczuk. Wasn't a great look, right? So I can acknowledge I'm never laying -2XX prices on Kevin Holland, period, point blank. I'll just never do that. He's fucked off enough times. He's blown it enough times. He's given subpar performances enough times. You don't want that. But did I think he was going to beat Roman Dolidze? No, that guy is literally a 185er and a 205er. Like that guy is ranked at 205. And people are like surprised that he was too much man for Kevin Holland. Yeah, he is. He's literally too big, right? Then you go back and look, Rene de Ritter. The guy weighed 219 pounds, I believe, the morning he fought Bo Nickel. Like, come on, guys. He's huge. He's a massive man. Kevin had no business in there with either of these guys, right? Now he's at 170 pounds, where he has to be disciplined in camp to make it. Otherwise, he's not going to make it. So if he makes the weight class, I'm like, this is a Kevin Holland who's showing up motivated, in shape, done the work in camp against a guy in Vicente Luque, who, in my opinion, had a clear prime in the UFC, and he's now post-prime. Kevin Holland is 32 years of age. He's barely fought in his optimal weight class in the UFC. But then I go back and I listen to guys that have fought him, right? Jeff Neal, who absolutely beat the ever-loving tar out of Vicente Luque in ways that are hard to go back and rewatch, fought Kevin Holland on the regional scene at 185 pounds. He got absolutely obliterated. And he said, Kevin Holland's the hardest puncher I've ever fought in my career. It's not close. I look at that like, if Kevin Holland can avoid getting out-grappled in this fight, which I do think is the one liability, Vicente Luque is just plain, flat out, a very dangerous grappler. He always has been. But a lot of his submission wins in the UFC are club and subs, where he hurts somebody upstairs, then gets him on the ground and puts him away. And Kevin is a very durable guy. Jack Della, most of his shots are bouncing off the shoulders. Kevin does a pretty good job D'ing up shots. Against Michal Oleksiejczuk, he got hurt. That's like the one time I can ever remember Kevin getting like flat out hurt badly in a fight, especially early on. But he recovered off of his back and submits the guy. And I'm just like, if I see Kevin Holland out there motivated, trying to win fights, that's a dangerous guy. That's a guy who's capable of winning. So I think Kevin Holland wins this fight by knockout. But I like both guys. You know, I'm not wishing for the downfall of one of my favorite fighters ever, the guy I used to call the death dealer of 170 pounds, Vicente Luque. At his best, he's that guy. Left hook, one of the best in the history of the business. You go watch him throw the left hook if you want to learn how to throw a better left hook, right? Guy's aesthetic, beautiful shots. But we also saw the Wonder Boy fight way back in the day. You can figure this guy out on the feet. You know, there's going to be pretty clear patterns to Vicente Luque's offense. He's going to throw that left hook. He's going to put the right hand behind it. He's going to try and step back into the pocket. He's kind of, the blueprint's been laid out for how he's going to fight, how he's going to approach it on the feet. The only thing he can do to switch it up, in my view, is try and take the fights to the ground now or try and get that Darce series going. He's a very good Darce player. But I think Kevin Holland's a good front headlock guy. I don't think he's going to be easy to put away in those positions. I honestly think grappling for grappling, Gunnar Nelson is clearly better than Vicente Luque even. So I don't think it's an easy fight to call. I think it's a tricky fight in some ways, especially from an odds perspective, right? If we're talking about a -115, you know, either way, okay, different story. But we're talking about Kevin's as a big favorite. Yeah, he's a perpetual bag fumbler. I understand that. But when it just comes down to it, you said, Liam, absent the odds, who do you think is going to win? I think Kevin Holland's going to win this one. I think he's going to knock him out. So that's the pick for me, man. Kevin Holland, I think he does it inside the distance. People are saying Kevin Holland by submission. I don't really see that either. Like, it would have to be a club and sub for me. I think Vicente Luque is normally pretty defensively responsible. I think back to the Chiesa fight, you know, got in some bad situations, immediately fighting hands, responding, turns in, puts Michael Chiesa in the Darce choke, fights over shortly thereafter. Both these guys Darce Michael Chiesa. So you look back, they both have those great front headlock games. The difference for me is just that I think Kevin is a guy that has been in there with a lot of really good grapplers that wanted to grapple him, and the same is not really true for Vicente for most of his career. So he's mostly been in crazy banger, stand up on the feet type wars. And, you know, he's done very well in those, but I think he's paid a lot of that price. And on the other side, I think Kevin, dangerous guy. So I don't like the lines in this fight, but Kevin Holland by knockout's the pick. Next up, this is the real people's main event, brother. Patchy Mix, no love, taking on Mario Bautista. Wiz, take it away. I've been talking.
Oh yeah. So we finally have the point where Patchy Mix makes his debut. Everyone's been waiting and enamoring for this guy to show up and make it to the promotion after, you know, going through the Bellators and the PFLs of the world. And look, Patchy Mix is an ace in the jiu-jitsu department and the grappling department. This guy is second to none and at 135 when it comes to jiu-jitsu. This is a mixed martial arts fight. I like to point that out. I'm not saying that Patchy can't win this fight. I just think this fight's very close. On the Patchy side, making his debut on one of the biggest cards of the year, if not the biggest card of the year, going up against someone that I will call a vet at 31, and Mario Bautista has had quite a few fights in the UFC and has shown that he can hang, albeit not the greatest level of competition. But obviously last time out against Jose Aldo, people thought there was a controversial decision. And yeah, the fight was close. I could see it going for either fighter there.
As a plus 115 Aldo better, I'm still not happy.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think that split decision could have gone either way. Ricky Simone fight was pretty impressive in my opinion. Damon Blatcher fight, close. Now, in the striking department, I think this is Mario, and Mario with emphasis. Patchy Mix just has never impressed me in the striking. Very meat and potatoes, and leaves a lot of openings to be countered, which is not a good thing against Mario. I think Mario's hands are pretty crisp and he's fast. Something that I noticed while listening in on the media day today for Mario is after he was commenting on Patchy saying, "Oh, I'll sub him and his coach and whoever taught his coach." He mentioned that he's prepped a lot for Patchy's jiu-jitsu, but the one thing that caught my attention was he's prepped to defend and get back up. He knows that he cannot hang with Patchy at all in the jiu-jitsu department. He's kind of openly admitted it. So he looks like he's going to try and keep this fight standing for 15 minutes, which is smart. I mean, I feel like that's the most obvious thing to do, but some fighters lack the IQ to execute. So at least he's on the right path in terms of what he needs to do. Now, in terms of pricing, I would want to get involved on Mario when it comes to maybe a plus 175, plus 180. I think we're a little bit in no man's land here when it comes to the line. I think maybe just accurate. Yeah, I keep flip-flopping on this one, but I've been more confident in my Mario take than anything. I think he's going to be able to defend takedowns and really keep this fight upright for 15 minutes. And on the feet, I just don't think it's close. So for me, it's Mario. I know a lot of people are not going to like that, but I think Mario.
Hey, bro, all that we're looking for on this show is the truth as you see it. And if you believe that Mario is going to win the fight, then I'm glad that you said it. On the other side, guys, I'm always going to tell you where I'm at, right? I'm biased as shit. I'm from New York, right? If we're talking about a guy from Section 9, I'm probably going to disclose my biases that I'm a guy who rides for Section 9, right? We talk about D3 wrestling. I'm going to mention, hey, I ride for these D3 wrestling guys. Shout out to Aljamain Sterling, by the way. Championship level. Beat Henry Cejudo, a gold medalist in the Olympics. This is MMA, as my guy Wizz said, right? So everything else that you've done in your career is cool and it matters, but at the end of the day, it's a fight. And when you look at this, right, I believe Mario Bautista is a good enough fighter that the way I handicap fights, the way I generally bet on fights, I'm not looking to fade guys that I think are good fighters unless I'm getting plus money, right? Like, just typically speaking, that's not the way I approach the game. It's like, hey, let me go fade this guy who's really good and I respect him at, chalk. I don't do that, right? So as far as who I'm picking to win this fight, with my New York biases acknowledged, with the fact that the first ever mixed martial arts event that I went to in person was headlined by one Patchy Mix who submitted Tony Gravely in the first round. And that very night in 2018, I said to myself, yo, this guy is special and he is going to be in the UFC one day. Here it is, Saturday night. We get our answers. And now, when Patchy Mix was an underdog several times in Bellator, when I was cashing in plus 235, I had 5 units against Kyoji Horiguchi. Thank you for the bag. When we go back, I had 2.2 units when he was an underdog against Magomed Magomedov. Last time he fought Magomed Magomedov, he was a minus 400 favorite. You understand me? I was ahead of the market on Patchy Mix. I'll just leave it there. But when it comes down to it, have I been laying these chalk prices with Patchy? No. And the only reason is I don't like laying chalk unless I have a damn good reason, right? And I think Mario Bautista is a solid guy. I took plus 115 on Jose Aldo against him. Jose Aldo clearly post-prime, but I thought he's got the juice to go out there and compete. He went out there and competed, in my humble opinion, right? I don't think anybody can look me in the eyes and say, Mario blew him out, dude. It wasn't even – Mario did what he needed to do to win. Hats off to him, right? I thought Aldo could have got the nod. I thought he did more damage if that's the criteria we're going with. Half the time we go with control, half the time we go with damage. All right, fair play. We give it to the guy who got the control. He got the control. He did what he needed to do, held him in position, did his thing, right? If you go back through Jose Aldo's career, guys, that's been the number one, like, how do you beat Jose Aldo? Don't stand there and strike with him unless you're Max Holloway and you could throw 500 significant strikes per fight. What you do is you push him into the fence and then you hold him there. Alex Volkanovski did it, right? You can go back. It's like, who else has done it? I think Piotr Jan beat his ass too in the middle of the ring. But most of the time, it's like, how do you do it? Merab Dvalishvili, he didn't even get one takedown. 0 for 16, right? He pushed him into the fence relentlessly the entire fight. That's how you beat him. So Mario Bautista did what he needed to do to get the win. Hats off to him. But then you go back and where do I see Mario Bautista? I posted the other day, people talk about quality of competition, but there's 7 fights that he had in the UFC that most people aren't going to talk about because they're against average guys and they're against guys that are no longer with the promotion, right? And meanwhile, they will be dismissive of Sergio Pettis, former ranked UFC guy. They'll be dismissive of Kyoji Horiguchi, fought for the UFC title. And again, some of these things are but they're not the right weight class. So then all you can do is fight the best guys that they offer you. Right? Is Patchy Mix turning down guys behind the scenes? I don't think so, right? Like, I think Patchy Mix is always like, yeah, I'll kill him. Please, thank you. Ding, right? I don't think he's worried about who's on the other end of the contract, right? That's why on 3 weeks' notice, he's saying, Mario Bautista, dangerous guy that nobody in the UFC wants to fight? Absolutely. Yeah, please. I would love to. That's who Patchy Mix is at his core. He has one loss as a professional. And when you watch that loss, it is against freaking a very talented guy. Oh, dude, Wiz, if you need to cut out, by the way, because I know that we've gone a little bit long, bro, please, at any time, just say, yo, I got to give my 3 and get that fuck out of here. Don't worry about it. But to close my thoughts on this fight, bro, I'm looking and I'm saying to myself, okay, Patchy Mix, for me, is just a way more dangerous finisher. That, for me, is the thing that separates him. When you look at who Mario Bautista is finishing at the UFC level, they're old guys. They're guys that should not be in the UFC anymore, with all due respect. For me, whether you think that Patchy Mix is the next UFC champion or you think Patchy Mix is hyped and overrated, I think we can all agree that Patchy Mix has earned the right to fight in the UFC. He has earned the opportunity to fight in the UFC. And what has he done with most of the opportunities in his career? He's absolutely left somebody in a heap, right? The fights that he's lost, has he ever been made a punk? Has he ever been shown the door? Has somebody ever made him quit or give up or fold the tent? Never one time in his career. That's the truth. And he's fought UFC level guys. So I don't want to hear that he hasn't. I saw him fight Tony Gravely in 2018. That guy went 4-4 in the UFC. So again, am I saying these are world beaters, the best that the UFC had to? Maybe not. But has he fought UFC level guys? Yes. Has he disposed of them accordingly? Yeah. Yes, he has. And when he didn't, he takes what, 3-4 rounds? I think it was 4 rounds personally, and maybe 1 10-8 round against Kyoji Horiguchi. That's what he does. Over 5, by the way. He lost to Juan Archuleta. He won the first 2 rounds and ran out of steam over 5. So rounds 3, 4, and 5, he didn't have the juice. He got beat. And he basically said, I needed that. I needed to be humbled by that. I thought I had it all figured out. I went out there. I ran out of gas. I won't let it happen again. And then he went out there, and in my humble opinion, the worst performance of his recent career against Magomed Magomedov, he was worried about pacing himself over 5. And he went out there and didn't throw as much, kind of was a little bit more, head movement, not throw as much, worried about how much output he puts out there. And now it's a 15-minute fight to show everything you've worked for your whole life. And so I talk about UFC debutante jitters. These are real things. These are the reasons I'm not just laying money just for the sake of it. I don't bet based on my heart and my emotions, but I do break down these fights as best I can objectively. And also I acknowledge my biases. And to break it down objectively, I think both these guys are very skilled fighters that could win fights in the top 10 in the UFC. But I think Patchy Mix is the more dangerous guy. I think he's ready for prime time right now. I think he's going to put Mario Bautista away. If you look at the other side, Mario Bautista has 2 losses in his career. Both of them are inside the distance. He's not doing 5-round fights. He's doing 3-round fights, mostly against journeymen in the UFC. And when he stepped up in competition, he needed to hang on for thin margins victories. Patchy Mix had to hold on for thin margins victories, whether you think he won or not against Magomedov. But he also fought him a couple years back and put him to sleep, cold, right? Left no doubt. Against Raytheon Stotts, Merab Dvalishvili has very few finishes in his career. He got one over Raytheon Stotts. It got him signed to the UFC. It was on looking for a fight. It was the big win of his career. They were there to look at Stotts. How about this, though? Patchy Mix is the next guy to do it. And nobody else has done it before or since. So maybe Raytheon Stotts isn't a bad fighter, and maybe we should give him some credit for, hey, Patchy Mix is a dangerous guy. With the hands, with the feet, with the knees. You don't want to be on the other end of those. Patchy Mix can fuck somebody up. And by the way, he can put you to sleep cold. And a lot of guys like to go for techniques and whatever where they need the other guy to give it to him, right? Ramiz Brahimaj the other day. One mistake from Billy Ray Goff, he made him pay right then. No more games, playing for keeps. You give me one opportunity, it's over. You give one of these guys with a beautiful ninja choke, right? Think of Saeed Nurmagomedov. These guys, you put your head in the hole one time the wrong way, fight's over. I believe Mario Bautista will make one mistake in this fight. I believe the fight will be over shortly thereafter. That for me is the breakdown, but I do respect his game. I have no money on the fight. I am rooting for Patchy Mix, and I hope that he lets everybody know that he is a real UFC level guy, and I believe that he is. So let's find out. I'm so excited for this fight. Really fired up that Patchy's getting this opportunity, and if he doesn't win this one, mark my words, he will win a fight in the UFC. He is that guy, but it's right into the deep end right away. So I'm fired up for this, man, but I think Patchy gets the job, the job done, and I do think he's going to put Mario to sleep. So
definitely possible. And the one thing for me is just I've never really trusted his hands, and I'm not saying that this fight is going to play out on the feet for an extended period of time or in the grappling for an extended period of time, but every fight starts on the feet, and I'm just not sold on his striking just yet. Now, if he goes out there and just shoots from minute one, that could just change the whole trajectory of the fight. Very interesting one. This is probably one of the more competitive fights we've had in a while. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you guys a quick breakdown on what I think for the last 3 fights, because I have parents coming into town tomorrow for the first time in 2 years, and I'm getting my place ready. So
family first. I'll bring it up on the screen for you, and when you want to move to the next fight, we'll move it up for you, and then I'll circle back for these top 3 fights, guys.
Much love, much love. We have a rematch here, Joe Pyfer versus Kelvin Gastelum. If you guys rewind and watch the initial breakdown during UFC, I believe, what was the name of the card? Was it UFC Mexico?
I think it was UFC Mexico, Mexico City.
Yeah, UFC Mexico City. I sided with Pyfer. I thought Pyfer was going to be able to get the finish done, and I think even more so this time out, being in New Jersey, in Joe Pyfer's backyard, giving him a little bit more time to prep and a little bit more hatred in his heart. I think he's going to be able to be the first person to knock out Kelvin Gastelum. On to the next one, which is going to be my plant the flag play of the week. I haven't had one of these in a while. So, yeah, Kayla Harrison, ITD. I think it comes at no surprise here. I took it earlier on in the week at -145. I'll give that one out. Took it for 3 units. Fairly confident in this one. I just don't think that Juliana is going to be able to resist the takedowns here. Now, the biggest issue I had taking this early was not knowing how Kayla appears on the scale, which is a genuine concern. I don't think Kayla Harrison's a 135er, and she struggled to make the cut last time out. I'll be very honest. But I felt as if I were to let this slip any longer, I think it'll end up in the -2XX, -250s. And I think it's already made its way to the -200s for the inside the distance line. So I think Kayla Harrison's going to be able to land takedowns here, and I think she subs Pena within 2 rounds. Last but not least, we have the main event of the evening. Merab Dvalishvili going up against Sean O'Malley. I struggle to see how this fight plays out any differently than the first fight. Multiple reasons, and then I will highlight a couple of things that have been in the media over the past couple of weeks and months. Last month, we see Sean O'Malley getting photographed walking out of an airplane on crutches with a walking boot, a full-on walking boot, not just like a broken ankle kind of walking boot, but the boot that goes all the way up to just below the knee, which that could mean either high ankle sprain, could be broken ankle, could be I forget what the terminology is because I broke my ankle, so been through it. So that is a concern. We also saw Merab break his toe, not as significant. Also mentioning how the fact that O'Malley is not talking as much shit isn't giving him as much motivation. I don't think Merab is a guy that lacks any motivation at all. Just the sheer fact that you have someone who has unlimited cardio that's going to go for takedowns over and over again over a not just 15-minute but 25-minute period that is proven to do so over and over again against someone who lacks a takedown defense. I'm not saying he can't develop takedown defense over the past year. I just don't think it's going to do him any good here. Unfortunately, I think Merab Dvalishvili is Sean O'Malley's kryptonite. And I think Merab's going to be and still after this one ends. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching the stream. Thank you, Liam, for having me on. Please like up the video if you haven't already, because we've been out here putting up content week in and week out just to entertain and to also help you guys out. So a like goes a long way. A comment goes a long way. Thank you to everyone in the chat for being so engaging always. And I will hope to see you guys for the next one.
Absolutely, brother. The pleasure's all mine. I hope that you have a great time with your folks. Thank you so much for the time, my brother. And good luck this weekend, as always. Got a plant your flag, got a lot of good looks. So cheers until next time, my man. God bless and good luck. We'll see you soon. Take care. All right, folks. You're stuck with just me. I kid, of course. But let's drop down here and Actually, you know what? I kind of like the other one better. Let's see how that looks again. No, much better. All right. So, guys, looking at the fights, we'll go back to the third fight from the top. Shout out to our brother Wiz. Now we will go it alone for the solo stream, and I will circle back. You know, in terms of my thoughts on this fight, oh boy, I was much more bullish on Kelvin Gastelum when this fight was supposed to take place at altitude. I feel like if you're looking to fade Joe Pyfer, you're probably doing so based on the fact that, you know, he kind of sells out with his power punching. He can, you know, tend to look a little bit limited with the cardio. And I thought that Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who's seasoned in 5-round fights at altitude where he's fought before in Mexico City, I thought all that boded well for Kelvin Gastelum. I don't know if it really does as well in Newark, New Jersey, where he's not going to have any of those advantages. You know, in terms of, you know, Pyfer's got to struggle more on the weight cut. He's got to go out there and, you know, really put in that kind of altitude investment, right? Getting there early. Pyfer said he had just slept in a tent and all this stuff. Meanwhile, Kelvin had been living, you know, in Mexico for weeks in advance. And I just felt like Kelvin had done everything right, checked a lot of boxes for that fight. Now he's got to do everything again. 33 years of age, 28 for Joe Pyfer. Pyfer is a dangerous grappler. He's a big guy. And he's also, you know, a talented enough guy on the feet. He's certainly got the power to put guys away. So I think that Pyfer is probably going to win this one on size. And, you know, the fact he could probably bank 2 rounds here if he needs to. Kelvin's wrestling and grappling has been a little bit hit and miss at times. On the positives for Kelvin, I know he's been working with Pat Downey a little bit, seen him brought into the fight ready room. I think that when you look at Kelvin, you know, he's definitely been a liability on the mat at times in his career. His scrambling has been good, but Pyfer does have, you know, a little bit more offensive jiu-jitsu to worry about. I think Kelvin on the other side, you know, he's got to be sprawl and brawl, try and put hands on Pyfer, maybe try and mix in his own single legs, you know, to try and keep this guy guessing, you know, keep him working. But it just feels to me like, you know, without that doubt in the mind of Joe Pyfer that comes from, am I going to gas out? You know, can I deal with the fact this fight's at altitude? I feel like that was a huge factor in my handicap. And now this feels like a much more winnable situation for Joe Pyfer. So for me, I don't feel great about either side in this fight. You know, I was pretty bullish on Kelvin last time they fought, but now I just feel like this is a worse situation for Kelvin. And that's the way I see it. All right, guys. Next up, we got Juliana Pena taking on Kayla Harrison in the co-main event, and massive underdog price for Juliana Pena in this fight. You know, when I look at where Juliana Pena is, you know, I showed before while Wiz was talking, the takedown defense highlighted on screen. I mean, just 23% takedown defense for Juliana Pena, according to UFC stats. That's over a long sample size. That's really, really concerning stuff for me. As far as I'm concerned, you know, against Kayla Harrison, somebody who's going to go out there and push her wrestling and grappling from the go, a girl who's averaging 2.7 takedowns per 15 minutes over the course of her short UFC career, you know, unless there's a massive, you know, something that goes wrong with the weight cut, I just think Kayla Harrison is the more talented fighter. I think she's the much more likely fighter to end up in the top position. And I think, you know, Juliana Pena is going to need a really special effort to win this fight. I think she'll probably need to come back in the later rounds. I think she may need to storm back for a finish, but I think Kayla Harrison will be in control of this fight until she's not. And if she's losing control of the fight, maybe you can get in live, something like that. You could look for a live entry on the Juliana Pena side, but honestly, I think Kayla Harrison, you know, unless she's struggling to get takedowns, which I really don't expect, I think she's going to be the much more dominant fighter physically and technically in this contest. And for those reasons, I think she's going to win this fight and win the belt. So massive price tag, right? When you're talking about a challenger for a title fight, when you're talking about a women's MMA bout in general, Kayla Harrison making a massive weight cut, there are reasons to be concerned on that side. But at 34 years of age, she's the younger woman. You look at the size in this fight, slight reach advantage for the champion, but there is a height advantage for the challenger. I think she's the stronger woman as well. So shout out to my guy, YBB, very sharp individual in the chat. Shout out to the Pena sub 2-3 call from Jewish Better. Man, I don't know about sub 2-3. I would have thought it would come later, if anything. But interesting. I think that this is a fun fight, you know, as far as WMMA is concerned, because there's a little bit of rivalry coming in. Both these women know how to talk a little bit of junk. I'm rooting for Kayla Harrison. I think she's a little bit more likable overall, but Juliana Pena has a chance to do the funniest thing and beat two of the best women in, the women's game, in these weight classes. So Juliana Pena for me is a junkyard dog. She is a tough woman. I mean, the absolute shellacking she was willing to take from Amanda Nunes is kind of remarkable. I've been told by my jiu-jitsu instructor that Amanda Nunes has put down many men in her day in the training room. So I believe that. I think Amanda Nunes really cracks with the best of them. She is a hard-hitting woman, and Juliana Pena was willing to take those shots. So Kayla Harrison, I think, is going to beat her ass, but the chance is that Juliana might be able to deal with some of that adversity and try and rally back on her later in the fight. So for me, that's something that, if I was looking at the Pena side, I would probably be looking at later round props or maybe some inside the distance plays, because I think Kayla's going to win the rounds and the minutes here more often than not. I think she's going to get the top position more often than not, but Juliana Pena could need just one moment of opportunity. The thing that ultimately seals it for me is Kayla Harrison. Her pedigree as a wrestler and grappler is quite high. And, Jermaine Durandamy, a UFC champion, so certainly a quality MMA fighter, but not a woman that was known for her wrestling and grappling pedigree, got a ninja choke and put Juliana Pena all the way to sleep. And I think that Kayla Harrison, dominant physically, I think she's probably going to have opportunities to dominate this fight on top. Ketlin Vieira, in my opinion, is a more skilled martial artist than Juliana Pena. She's just not as much of a savage dog. So for me, Kayla Harrison has shown that she's at this level. And guys, I want to shout out, we got 101 people watching live with us on YouTube. It is 2:34 local time. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Thank you everybody for the support. I hope that you guys drop a like on this video if you're enjoying. If you guys have comments, thoughts on the main event, go ahead and start firing those off, because we are on to the main event, guys. And it is none other than the machine, Merab Dvalishvili, taking on Suga, Sean O'Malley. It's a rematch. The fight is going down. I got an interesting take for you guys here, because the last time that this fight was going off, you guys know how I feel in terms of the New York power trio that runs bantamweight. I said a long time ago that New York is where the bantamweight division's greatness runs through. Okay, you go back and look, and it was Aljamain Sterling. Championship greatness ran through him. Sean O'Malley takes the belt from him, but then New York reasserts themselves on top. Merab Dvalishvili gets the belt back. And if you look at Patchy Mix, he was holding it down for us outside of the UFC. So in Bellator and PFL, my guy Patchy Mix, New York, holding down the 135-pound titles, letting people know that these New York boys at 135 pounds will teach you how to wrestle once again. Now, here's the thing. Every fight is a unique opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, you look at every fight as a unique opportunity as it comes. And the last time that these two guys were going to fight, I thought Merab Dvalishvili was going to win the fight. I had done a preview of the fight beforehand, and my pick was Merab in rounds 4 or 5 or via decision. And I had put in parentheses O'Malley KO 1-2. And the reason for that was I felt if Sean O'Malley had not hurt Merab Dvalishvili in the first 2 rounds, had not knocked him out, that Merab's pace, cardio, relentless aggression would eventually get him the desired result, which would be Sean O'Malley fatiguing and Sean O'Malley either capitulating in the 4th or 5th round or losing a decision. And when you go and look at how that fight played out, I saw a Sean O'Malley that did not quite look to me like the best version of Sean O'Malley. But I also saw a Merab Dvalishvili that put on a great performance, went out there, did exactly what he needed to do to win the fight. Did I think he coasted in the 5th round? I did. And did I think that he almost, made a critical mistake that cost him? I truly believe that that was close to happening. And let me explain my thought process. When you look at the 5th round, I'm thinking in my head, like, this should be the time when Merab Dvalishvili pushes a little bit harder and gets the finish, gets this guy out of there. And the reason I felt that way is you look at O'Malley on the stool between rounds 4 and 5, and his corner says to him, Tim Welch is sitting him down. He's basically like, hey, we're almost done here. 5 more minutes. He's basically like just letting him know, hey, man, you're almost at the end of this. And for me, that was a red flag. I was like, oh, God, I hate to see that. He needs to, convince him to go back out there and whatever. And so we see O'Malley basically defeated on the stool, or what it looks like, between rounds 4 and 5. And he comes out in round 5 and unanimously wins the round. because he hurts Merab to the body. And Merab was forced to flee and move backwards for large portions of that round. And I start to look at the fight and I say to myself, okay, you've got two judges that gave Sean O'Malley the 3rd round. And you had all 3 judges give Sean O'Malley the 5th round, unanimous round for him. And if you had said to me before the fight, like, what is the least likely round for Sean O'Malley to win? I would have said the 5th round. So with all that being said, we've seen Merab Dvalishvili lose rounds many times, right? If you go back and look, he lost the 1st round against Henry Cejudo. He lost the 1st round, arguably a 10-8 round against Marlon Moraes. He lost several rounds against Umar Nurmagomedov. So I look at Merab Dvalishvili as an incredible fighter that has a ungodly ability to push pace for 25 minutes and a great motor, excellent wrestling skills, a willingness to throw volume on the feet when he needs to. Like, the guy does a lot of things beautifully well in mixed martial arts. But it's so funny what a difference a day makes, because you go back and look, and twice in his last 5 fights, Merab Dvalishvili has been a plus 200 underdog or wider, meaning people thought he had, a very small percentage chance to win, less than 35%, right? And now you're seeing Merab Dvalishvili is installed as a 75% favorite here. We have a recent data point for what this matchup was considered in the market beforehand, right? Because they already fought once before. And when they fought last time, most of fight week, Sean O'Malley was a slight favorite. Merab Dvalishvili was about a plus 100 underdog. Then Merab goes up to minus 125. Sean's sitting at about an even money underdog. He loses the fight. He loses it via decision. I thought it was a clear decision for Merab, but ultimately 48-47 on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards, right? One more round for O'Malley, and still that's what we would have been looking at. So I think that in the moment, it felt so dominant. It felt so clear for Merab. But the truth is he had 2 very, very clear rounds in a 5-round fight, and then 3 rounds that were a lot closer, the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th. So now I say to myself, okay, what am I looking for when I go to the betting market? And I'll just tell you guys, this year my goal has been to bet on proven commodities. Earlier in the year, when they were giving me Merab Dvalishvili, the machine, at plus 200 XX, right? I think it was like plus 235. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe it was plus 240, whatever it was. They gave me plus 2XX on Merab Dvalishvili. And I said to myself, I don't care how good Umar is, because I know for a fact Merab is elite. He has elite cardio. He has elite will to win. He will push the pace. He will wrestle his ass off. He will do everything he can to win this fight. So unless Umar is head and shoulders above him, he will outperform this number. And he did. So now I have Sean O'Malley, who, in my humble opinion, as an 18-2 professional, is an elite fighter. He has 8 knockdowns in the UFC. He's never been knocked down one time. The guy has elite striking metrics in terms of his differential. It's like +3, his striking differential per minute. So he's touching you 3 times more than you're touching him on average. Obviously, against Merab Dvalishvili, he had a different stat line. But he's still sitting pretty on all these stat categories after a bad fight. One thing I try and do is I try and imagine, how could the fight be different for the person who's the underdog, right? Because Sean O'Malley has things that he needs to change, clearly, in order to win the fight. He lost the first time. Sean O'Malley says, hey, listen, I've changed a lot of things in my life, but most importantly, as soon as the fight was over, I got surgery on my hip. He said, going into the fight, the reason I accepted the fight is because the UFC said they really needed me at the Sphere. And so he did the company a favor and said, yes, you need me at the Sphere, I'll be at the Sphere. And he was hurt going into that fight. So is there a chance he could be hurt coming into this fight? Yes. Is there a chance that Merab could be hurt coming into this fight? Yes. But if we acknowledge both those things and call it scratch, all right, we know that Sean O'Malley was hurt going into the last fight by his admission. And for me, him getting surgery is confirmation he was hurt, right? Like, okay, we know he was hurt because he immediately gets surgery after the fight. So now Sean O'Malley is coming off of a surgery, and that is a hit and miss thing, right? Like, am I saying guaranteed he's going to look great coming off surgery? No, there's a chance he could look career worse and retire. That is obviously a possibility. But what I'm looking at is a 30-year-old man, right, who's not super shot born. He hasn't had a million fights. He's had 20 fights. He's 30 years of age. He should be in the prime of his life in many ways. Then you look at, okay, he's the bigger man. He's the younger man. He has championship pedigree. He's won the belt. He's won 5-round title fights. So the guy has back class. Okay, is he proven as an underdog? That's my next question, right? Because he's sitting as a plus 2XX underdog. The guy's 3-1 as an underdog for a very, very commendable 90+% return on your investment. And then you say to yourself, okay, well, what about this odds range? He's been a plus 2XX underdog twice in the UFC. It was against Petr Yan, and he won a controversial split decision, but he won it. And it was plus 2XX, I believe plus 250. Against Aljamain Sterling in his first world title fight, he was plus 215 on the money line. Knocked him out. And he was hurt coming into that fight. So now you say to yourself, okay, this guy has been a very productive underdog, right? He's been extremely productive in this category. And on the other side, Merab Dvalishvili, just his last fight, was a big underdog. Against Petr Yan, he was lined a big underdog, just like Sean O'Malley was. And they both went out there and got the win. Merab's was more convincing, absolutely. But the difference was Petr Yan was hurt in the Merab Dvalishvili fight. Because honestly, even as a Merab backer, I didn't think it was going to be 50-45, easiest fight of Merab's life type category, right? I thought it was going to be very competitive. I thought it'd be back and forth. And meanwhile, Merab's just downhill on this guy, and Petr Yan looked like a shell of himself. He's looked much better in subsequent bouts. So I look at these two guys, and I say to myself, these guys are both elite. No doubt about it. Merab Dvalishvili is an elite fighter. But I just feel the same way about Sean O'Malley. Right? Both these guys have produced incredible results. On the one hand, Merab, nobody can keep pace with him in the wrestling. Nobody is as good at that game plan as him. But he's not a proven finisher at this level. He's finished, very few guys at this level. Sean O'Malley is a proven finisher at this level. So if you're going to give him, theoretically, 25 minutes to find a kill shot, he showed in the last fight, even when he's tired, feeling down on himself, and kind of out of it mentally, he still hurt Merab. So I think that Sean has the ability to hurt him. I think that Sean has the ability to swing close rounds with big shots. And I think that Sean has taken a lot of the right lessons from the last fight, which is, hey, I don't need to force a beef with this guy. I need to go out there, keep it competitive, keep it respectful, do my best, try and make this about my skills versus his skills. Because if he does that, O'Malley has a better chance of winning. Last time out, he was down on himself early. He was like, I'm getting taken down. I'm starting to feel sorry for myself. And by the way, if he starts feeling sorry for himself here, he's not going to win. But he's not sounding to me like an immature guy who thinks Merab is easy to dismiss and all these things. He's saying Merab is the best guy in the history of the weight class. I understand that, but I have the skills to beat him. Last time out, I didn't get to show my best product. This time out, I'm going to show my best product. For me, one of the sharpest bets I ever placed in my life was Aljamain Sterling plus 370 against Petr Yan, right? Similar background. It was the second fight. It was a rematch. The first time out, everybody decided this is how the fight will go every time. Petr Yan will have more cardio late. He will beat him up. Alja will get no success in the takedowns. My whole theory was this. Aljamain Sterling did a podcast right after that fight, the first time. He wins the fight, wins the title. Everybody's ragging on him. He's an actor. He's a faker, all this stuff. I listened to what Aljo said on his podcast, and you know what he said? He said, guys, this whole camp, I could not feel my wrist. Like my whole arm has been dead. He's like, I have no strength in my arm. Guys, I couldn't grab a hold of anything. I couldn't grab a jar, right? It's like, okay, that's what Aljo's saying. Then you go back and look at the footage, guys. Aljamain Sterling, one of the most effective grapplers in the bantamweight division's history, is having no success wrestling Petr Yan. He cannot grab a hold of the guy. You could see it on film. He's trying to grab him, and Petr Yan's throwing him around, whipping him around. So then what is Aljo left with? He has to strike from the outside. He has to spam offense to keep Petr Yan off of him, and he started to gas out. And then he got hit with a knee on the ground, and the rest is history, right? But he said, guys, I need to get surgery. And when I get surgery, I will feel so much better because I literally can't grab a hold of anything right now. Anything is better than this. Aljo gets surgery. He comes in my humble opinion, for that rematch, looking in career best shape. And he goes out there and gets a 10-8 first round against Petr Yan, taking him to the ground, dominating him physically, using his skills and his techniques, but mostly the fact that when Aljamain Sterling's on top of people, his grip, his strength is unbelievable. And he did Petr Yan dirty because Petr Yan had expectations in his mind for this is how good this guy is, and I'm going to show him what level it is, and this guy's an actor. And then Aljo put him on his ass. and he took him down, and he took his back, and he showed him levels on the ground. That's the truth. And when you look at that fight, the fact that Aljamain Sterling went from -110 in the first fight, +100 even money, to a +370 underdog in the second fight was complete disrespect, and he showed as much. Now in this fight, I can't guarantee that Sean O'Malley is going to do that. But what I can guarantee is that last time out, 70 to 80% of the public believed that Sean O'Malley was the better fighter and he would win this fight. And now 70 to 80% of the public believes Merab Dvalishvili is the better fighter and he will win this fight. That is the definition, in my humble opinion, of recency bias. And when I look at this fight, I say to myself, if I can get elite fighters in bantamweight title fights at +2XX or better, I'm probably going to take that and live with the results more often than not. I did it with Merab against Umar. It worked out for me very nicely. I did it with Aljamain Sterling against Petr Yan. It worked out for me nicely. So will it work out every time? That I can't guarantee. But again, Merab Dvalishvili, when he was +2XX, both times in his UFC career, I was there. I bet him against Petr Yan. I bet him against Umar Nurmagomedov. So it's not like I'm a Merab hater. I'm a Merab fan. I enjoy the guy. I've told people, not only is he a guy that's easy to root for in terms of he's likable, he's a all-action fighter. He does everything that you want to see from a guy building a personality, building his social media, doing all this stuff right. But at the end of the day, guys, he's a 34-year-old bantamweight. That's getting up there in age. He's not a spring chicken. He's been in a lot of hard fights. He's been hurt multiple times. Marlon Moraes had him on the verge of being finished. That's a fact, right? Had him very dangerously close to being out. Different referee, maybe we're having a different conversation. Merab's been put in deep guillotines before, right? Whether you think it was fair or foul against Ricky Simone, in a deep guillotine, in deep trouble. By the way, slammed himself on his head in that fight. Picked up Ricky while he was in the guillotine, slammed forward on his head. People debate whether he went out from being choked unconscious or whether he went out from being slammed on his own head unconscious. So Merab, tougher than an old leather boot. No one would ever dispute that. But does he get hurt? Yeah, he gets hurt somewhat frequently. Now we know he can be hurt to the head. He can be hurt to the body. He's got broken toes. Like, what about all these factors, besides the fact he's got great cardio, screams -300? It just doesn't make sense to me. So if Merab was a -185 in this fight, I'd be just keeping my hands clean of it and saying, hey, you know what? Good luck, fun fight, but I don't really feel like there's clear value here. Anything above 2-1 on a fight between two elite fighters, it just feels to me like I'd rather be on that plus money side. So for me, guys, first time in my life, I'm betting on Suga Sean O'Malley, and that's the way that it is, man. So God bless, good luck. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the show. I want to say, if you guys don't mind, a couple of quick things that you could do to support the show if you have enjoyed it. Number one, go ahead and drop a like on this video. Number two, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. I see a lot of people watch the show on a week-to-week basis, but they're not subscribed. So please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Very easy way to show love and support. If you guys want to beat some line moves, let's go ahead and pull this up real quick, because one thing you cannot do in this game is pick whether or not somebody's going to win. All you can do is try and put your money in good positions and then hope for the best. You hope that you do your job by getting good numbers, and then the fighters do their job by going out there and winning the fight. But here's what I can show you guys right now. This is a free tool that I use a lot of the time, and it's called OddsJam, right? So I go on OddsJam and I use it to track the best price in the market in my jurisdiction. You guys can go click your own thing. This is all totally free, by the way. Just go use this as a free resource if you want. If you're looking for an MMA odds board, this is one that I use, right? The market average for Sean O'Malley is down to +228. Earlier in the week, when I sent Sean O'Malley, in fact, I sent it last week, Sean O'Malley was +270, best available price. The market average was like +257. So +260s were out there, +265s were out there. And now the entire market has been thwacked on the Sean O'Malley side. I think Novig is the one site that really has that outlier price, +241. If you go back and look, I'm going to pull up right now what the odds are looking like on a market maker like BetOnline. BetOnline has +230, +231 on Pinnacle Sportsbook. So yeah, +230, +228. That seems a lot closer to where the true odds are for this fight. +270, I thought was a pretty generous price. So I got involved at +270. I did add to that position as well. So I took 0.75 units. I added 0.5 units. So I'm now up to 1.25 units on Sean O'Malley plus 270. And one thing that I always want to acknowledge when I do these breakdowns, guys, I'm not afraid to look like a fool. There are times when I'm going to go out there and make a call and I'll be right and I'll look like a genius. There are times I make a call and I come back to you guys and I say, guys, I thought it was, I'm a fool. I was completely dead wrong. So I always want to say, you celebrate the wins, you own the losses in this industry. I'm always happy to do that. But when I look at these two guys, I just say, these guys are both very good. I've bet both of them, I bet Merab plenty of times at plus 2XX, right? Now Sean O'Malley, a guy who's rarely plus 2XX is in that range, and he's done very well there before. So I'm willing to look like a fool and take the risk. So that's the way I do it, man. It's a numbers game, and I'm playing the numbers. Happy with where I'm at because I got in at plus 270. It's been bet off the board. So now I'm hoping that Sean O'Malley is coming back in healthy. He is feeling ready to go. And if he is, I think he's going to give a much better account of himself in this rematch than he did in the first fight. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. If you're ever looking for more information from me, you can find it all down in the description box below. Want to say a special thank you to my guy, Wizz MMA. He's off the line now, but he was on the show earlier. If you guys missed his takes, I will have everything timestamped. I will have Wizz's timestamps as well for those last 3 fights on the card, so you guys can figure out, all your stuff. And again, whether you tail fade or you're indifferent, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to support the show and to watch. And something to look forward to, I'm going to be editing a Cam Teague interview. Cam Teague, guy who's a Dana White Contender Series alumni. He's going to be back on the show coming up. That's something that's in the pipeline for you guys. So thank you guys all so much for the support. If you have any more questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and fire them off in the chat. But until next time, God bless, good luck, and enjoy those fights. See you, everybody. Take care.